he's quite used to getting to Europa League finals, so that's probably why.
Okay.
Is there not a small part of you that is worried that your legendary status is going to be diminished even further? Because surely you have to win something to be a legend at a football club.
I totally agree.
Formula One. It's a sport often seen as insular and elitist, but it's seen a meteoric rise under its owners Liberty Media, not only in popularity and viewership, but in the ability to almost print money. From greater access to more races, here's how it happened. For decades, Formula One was owned and run by one man, Bernie Ecclestone. He was old school, someone who thought the sport itself was enough, and there was no need for all this modern marketing and social media nonsense. But in 2016, Ecclestone agreed to sell his baby to American group Liberty Media. It cost Liberty Media $4.4 billion, and they quickly got to work. We got an F1 app almost immediately, and teams were allowed to show us more from behind the scenes. One of Liberty's most important deals was with Netflix, which in 2019 brought us Drive to Survive. The effect? An almost 70% rise in viewership for races in the US alone. It's massively benefited Formula One online too, with a rise from 7.8 million followers across its social media platforms in 2016 to around 50 million today. New eyes are on the sport too, with F1's own subscription TV channel, which people can watch anywhere in the world. But the main market they've tapped into is the US. There's now 3 races there a year in Texas, Miami and Las Vegas, and an American-branded team, Cadillac, getting involved in the sport too. More races seems to be the direction of travel. A street circuit in Madrid's being welcomed onto the calendar, while conversations around a Grand Prix in Africa have ramped up in the last few years. More big events could be in the offing too, after the massive F1 75 season launch event in London in 2025. 7.5 million people tuned in to watch it live across the social media channels, and that doesn't include the viewing figures for where it was broadcast on TV in certain countries. It seems Liberty will do whatever they can to grow the F1 brand. Their efforts have been worthwhile too, with Forbes valuing the sport at $17.1 billion back in 2023, almost 4 times more than what they bought it for in 2016. Not bad, considering it's seen as a sport where people just drive around in circles.
Good evening and welcome to Danny Kelly's Trans-Europe Express. I'm Kevin Hatchard, sitting in for Danny tonight. Alongside me is the Inspector Morse to my Lewis, the Fog to my Rigodon. It is the European football superbrain, Andy Brassell. It is an action-packed show for you tonight. We'll keep you across what's going on in El Clasico. We'll review what's been a truly crazy week at Real Madrid. The relegation battle and the race for the Champions League couldn't be closer in Germany heading into the final weekend. We'll hear from Cesc Fabregas as we focus on Como's European qualification, and we'll tell you which former Premier League striker has got into trouble this week for messing about with a fire extinguisher. You won't be surprised at the player's identity. The Trans-Europe Express has left the station, and you're all very welcome. Hi Andy, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm struggling here with just 4 eyes because there's so much going on across Europe this evening. Loads of games, which obviously will keep you updated with as we go, including, of course, El Clasico, where Barcelona only need a point to win La Liga against Real Madrid this evening. They are currently 2-0 up in the half-time interval.
Yeah, very tasty free kick from Marcus Rashford, a goal from Ferran Torres, putting Barcelona in control of that one at half-time. Over in Italy, it's Milan 0, Atalanta 3, goals from Ederson, Zappacosta and Raspadori. Milan in serious danger of not qualifying for the Champions League. We'll dig into that later on. And Andy's effectively at the Liga desk. He's like Tom Cruise in Minority Report. He's moving all of the tiles around. It's very high-tech. Andy,
I'm glad you went with that rather than William Baldwin in Sliver, to be honest.
Oh, yeah, that's a bit more creepy, isn't it, really?
It's much more innocent.
Yeah. Minority Report's a bit more heroic, maybe. I think.
Yeah.
What stands out, Andy? I know there's lots going on, but is there anything that particularly stands out so far?
Well, the big score at the moment is Toulouse 1, Lyon 0. Lyon in possession of third spot, the last automatic Champions League place at the moment, but losing against a very, very physical Toulouse team with Endrick getting quite a going over.
There is only one place to start. Talking of people getting a going over, it's time for this.
Carrière, le Paris Saint-Germain, Mbappe! Mbappe! Little give and go, Mbappe's in! Oh, it's 2-2! He scored twice in 2 minutes! Tête de Kylian Mbappé. Allez, Kylian!
Yes, it is Mbappe watch. Not just about Kylian Mbappe, very much about a crazy week at Real Madrid. And the story that everybody's talking about, Andy, is the clash on the training ground between Aurelien Tchouameni and Fede Valverde, a clash that left Valverde in hospital. They clashed on Wednesday after a couple of tasty challenges in training. That argument continued on Thursday. It's been painted in different ways, but what we do know is that Valverde suffered what Real Madrid described as a traumatic brain injury that sounded very, very dramatic, a concussion, we might have said. But Valverde out of action, both players censured and fined. What a mess.
Yeah, it really is. And I guess Real Madrid have been building to this for a while. Now, we spoke in last week's Mbappe Watch about how the eponymous hero had maybe not been so heroic and had been at the heart of being late to team meetings, some rudeness with various members of staff, just the sort of stuff that in a different situation, Real Madrid normally leak to the press sympathetic to them when they want to get rid of a player. Now, no one's suggesting that is the case for Kylian Mbappe just yet, even though there is this multi-million signatory petition backing Mbappe out at the moment. Of course, there's nothing to say that, you know, Joan Laporta and Nasser Al-Khelaifi haven't signed it 10 million times each.
Yes, I was thinking that myself, to be honest.
Slightly unscientific, you're right to say, Kev. But of course, what we do know is what happened, as you say, between Valverde and Tchouameni. As you say, a variety of different reports. The most common ones being that they'd had a dispute on Tuesday. On Wednesday, it seems Tchouameni came in and tried to apologise. That apology was rejected by Valverde. Scuffle followed. And the way Valverde described it, because interestingly, Valverde put out his own Instagram statement about it before Real Madrid put out their statement about it, which I think tells you about how well the club is managing it, really. Tchouameni also got his statement out before Real Madrid did. And he'd said out there were no punches thrown, Valverde had said, but he'd just fallen over and hit his head on a table, which obviously could be quite nasty, but adds a whole sort of takes it away from passions boiling over in the light of recent disappointments and moves it on to them being like maybe the Frank Spencers of European football, which is something totally different. And I guess a comfort to the rest of us that, multi-million heirs every year can be, the victim of emasculating episodes as well.
Yes. A whole generation of our listeners, by the way, scouring TikTok for references to Frank Spencer, desperately Googling to find out who on earth is that and does he play for Real Madrid's youth team. We've given a lot of stick to Alvaro Arbeloa in general, and there is this feeling that it has become Vibes FC again, and maybe he's lost control of the squad, but you were quite impressed with actually how he dealt with this publicly, the Real Madrid interim coach.
Yeah, and it's bad that it fell to him. As I say, I think the problem is when everything runs through one man at a club, and that man being a 78-year-old man in Florentino Perez, it does mean that there's a lot of clearing up to do, really. And we saw that, as I said, with Real Madrid's quite slow response. All they said is like each player has been fined €500,000 and we won't be commenting on it any further, which obviously obscured it even more. But Arbeloa came out and said, look, what happened shouldn't have happened. But really, I think that the main thing is that we don't demonise anyone. I think that's important. It was really good of him to say that. Of course, this is why he got the job in the first place, because he's a good company man in charge of the B team before, thought of as being a more talented coach than Raul, who obviously they were grooming for the eventual role of Real Madrid head coach. And when that became clear that wasn't going to happen, they gave Arbeloa his shot. Now, of course, he's turned out to be no Zinedine Zidane, but I do think in this situation, you just needed someone to at least try and calm it.
Now, when you've got a very fractious situation with players at loggerheads and generally feelings running high, what do you do? Oh, you call Jose Mourinho. That's what you do, because that'll calm everything down. That'll make things really, really straightforward. He's at Benfica at the moment, as we know. But the feeling is increasingly that Florentino Perez, who wasn't entirely on board with the Xabi Alonso hiring, is determined to push this one through. And his main choice, reportedly, is Jose Mourinho. Now, Mourinho, probably one of the few coaches who left on good terms with Perez, I guess, and, did some good work at Real Madrid. But this feels like an enormous risk, doesn't it?
Yeah, and he did some good work at Real Madrid a really long time ago that massively drained him, and he's never quite been the same since, I think you could argue. But regardless of that, it looks like it's going to happen. Widespread reports in not just Spain, but Portugal, where everyone who covers Benfica now expects him to join Real Madrid in the near future. Now, he talked about this in his pre-match press conference yesterday. Benfica, as well as most of the rest of the Portuguese Liga, playing tomorrow night. And he'd said, look, well, I personally have had no contact with Florentino or with any executive member of the Real Madrid board. Now, of course, those eagle-eared amongst you will notice that he didn't say none of my entourage have had contact with Real Madrid or any or Florentino Perez or any members of the executive board. Look, I think we know which direction it's going in. But again, we've talked about it before. I think it's very indicative of Real Madrid, A, not having a plan, and B, Florentino running the show far more than is healthy.
So on that basis, then, if we assume, for the purposes of this, that Mourinho's going to get the job, how does he approach it? Because there is an argument to say, with Barcelona on the attack, by the way, in El Clasico, with it still 2-0 to the home side closing in on the title, is there an argument to say this squad is currently ungovernable and that actually there's nothing they consistently respond to right now?
Yeah, and I guess the fashionable thing is to blame the players. I think both match-going Real Madrid fans and global Real Madrid fans probably feel that. We talked about the petition, and, there is a feeling. I don't just think outside the Real Madrid dressing room. I think from some elements inside the Real Madrid dressing room that a lot has gone wrong since Kylian Mbappe's arrived. And despite the fact that the numbers are very impressive, they feel a long way away from winning anything of value, as tonight's game proves yet again. And of course, we'll look at El Clasico once it's finished in greater detail in the next hour. But I think you can look at him, you can look at Vinicius, and of course, both of those, especially Vinicius, by the way, have been singled out, as we've said all season, by the crowd at the Bernabeu. But really, all roads lead to the president. The minute Florentino Perez didn't back Xabi Alonso and just let Vinicius get on with it, he created a monster. He allowed the players to run roughshod. Now, I don't know, the idea is Mourinho goes in there and blows it all up. But with big players on massive contracts and not an unlimited budget, because, a part of Florentino Perez's behaviour and the push for Super League and all of that is really indicative of the fact that Real Madrid are no longer kings of the global football castle in a world where you have PSG and Manchester City, not to mention far better run clubs.
And just a quick word on Mbappe, obviously still injured, not playing in El Clasico, went to Sardinia with his girlfriend, and that seemed to have sparked a bit of anger among some of the Real Madrid fans. You said quite rightly, the numbers, it's all kicking off in El Clasico, by the way. The players, Real Madrid players and Barcelona players coming together, a bit of a fracas there. But just on Mbappe, as you say, the numbers are there. The on-pitch performances are there, but he hasn't won over, universally, those Real Madrid fans. So what happens now?
Well, I guess there has to be a question, Kev, as well. Maybe, despite the fact that, you know, it's felt by everyone that he's been fated since he was a child, maybe it's just not working. And maybe it's never going to work. I think we have to look at that possibility. Now, I think there are a couple of possibilities. Firstly, that Mbappe goes, although there's no obvious landing spot. He's 27 years old, 28 in December, so he's not young anymore, and I think he has to think about the future of his career. The other possibility is Vinicius goes, and you know they're still miles off agreeing a new contract for him, so that has to be looked at as well. I wonder if we end up at a point where Kylian Mbappe gets what he wanted in Paris, but in Madrid. Because one of the ways in which Arbeloa has been very helpful, of course, is he's brought through a lot of players from their very, very good youth academy, La Fabrica. A lot of those players in the past of talent have not been used in the Real Madrid first team. They've gone on to succeed for other clubs. But maybe that is the future. You can imagine Mbappe and a load of young guys who want to do the running and pressing for him.
That old man Mbappe surrounded by the kids. What a lovely image that is as Real Madrid blunder on into the future. Our poll, by the way, who should Real Madrid hire as coach for next season? Jose Mourinho, Mauricio Pochettino, Jurgen Klopp, or Kylian Mbappe as a player coach? You can text 81089 if you want to get involved, or get in touch on our various social media channels. Still 2-0 to Barcelona in El Clasico. Coming up, we'll review the Champions League semi-final.
Content creator and Palace fan Ollie Thomas is with us this morning. A very good morning to you, Ollie. How are you?
Morning, Ollie.
Morning. I'm good. I'm a bit tired, as you can imagine, but I'm good. And thanks, Dean. You're right. We are the best fans in the world.
It's debatable. It's debatable, Ollie. I'm joking. I have a soft spot for Palace. My sister plays for Palace. They just got promoted, and yeah, I mean, fair play to them. Your manager, I mean, the fact that he is leaving and he might win a third trophy before he goes is crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. It's obviously sad that he's going, but I think it could have turned a bit sour, and did turn a bit sour at the start of the calendar year. And fair play to Steve Parish, who held his own and didn't sack him. And it's now kind of become a nice send-off. And I think everyone wants to win it for Glasner as well, rather than it being like a bitter goodbye, I suppose. I think we've channeled that departure really well. And yeah, I'm feeling confident. It's weird watching a Palace team that just repeatedly turns up in big games. Like, I'm just not used to it. Every single big game we've basically ever had under Glasner, we've turned up, played really well. So hopefully we can do it one more time.
Why do you think he's leaving the club? I'm trying to work it out myself. Because he must realise that
wasn't
Palace
guaranteed. I mean, they got rid of the best players and they didn't replace them, and he'd won trophies, and they still hadn't got that right. Would that be it, Ollie? Would you think he was frustrated with how the club has been run?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, he basically did exactly the same thing when he was at Wolfsburg and Frankfurt. Like, the timelines are very similar in terms of he comes to a club, starts really well, does really well, and then falls out with the board. And he's been obviously very open about the fact that he didn't think we should have sold Eze, didn't think we should have sold Gahey, or at least when we sold them.
You're listening to Trans Europe Express. It is still Barcelona 2, Real Madrid 0 in El Clasico, but Thibaut Courtois, the Real Madrid goalkeeper, has been keeping the score down. Elsewhere in Serie A, it is Milan 0, Atalanta 3. That could be a huge result in the race for the Champions League spots coming up to the final quarter of an hour there at San Siro. But we're going to take
a little thought there. Should we have had Max Allegri on our list for the next Real Madrid manager? Because if they don't make the top four, will he be able to carry on at Milan? My guess would be no.
Yeah, I mean, he has obviously been linked with that Italy job as well, and he was quite adamant a few weeks ago, wasn't he, that he was going to stay, but he might not be given that choice if it carries on like this. We know what the Champions League final lineup is going to be. It's going to be Paris Saint-Germain, the holders, up against Arsenal in Budapest. We'll cover that for you on the talkSPORT network. Andy, let's start with Bayern's game against PSG, because we hoped for, maybe partially expected, another absolute thriller. It was, but not in terms of the goals. 5-4 in the first leg, 1-1 in the second leg, and Paris Saint-Germain going through narrowly. But the truth is, having scored an early goal, Luis Enrique's men were able to really dig in very impressively.
Yeah, and it's funny because it's where the eye test sometimes differs from the numbers, because it's remarkable to think that there were more shots in this game than there were in the first game, which had 7 goals more, of course. But I thought it was really exciting in its own way. But what really underlined what a great team PSG are, and how they've been able to get to this point where they're dominating Europe, is that they can beat you in so many different ways. I think, obviously, as you say, the early goal really helped them, and I guess if you're talking about being consistent with that first game, the fact that they went for it from the off really helped them, as you say, can control the tie. But the fact that they, having played this really open game in the first leg, which again was maybe a reaction to Bayern taking the lead, that they defended so well, even without Achraf Hakimi, I thought was really impressive. Like, bear in mind, Hakimi has no natural replacement in the PSG squad, as stands in the PSG senior squad. So Warren Zaïre-Emery gets put at right back, and he's done that on occasion this season, because Luis Enrique's argument has been Hakimi's unmatchable, so therefore
let's not even try.
Yeah, let's not try, exactly. And it really worked, actually, because I thought, even though Luis Diaz was again the most impressive player for Bayern, I thought what really helped is having the cover of Marquinhos, who had by far his best game of the season, who was really great. William Pacho was really great, but Marquinhos was going out there to help Zaïre-Emery and sort of double up on Luis Diaz as well. And it was a really, really frustrating experience for Bayern. And, you watch Bayern every week, Kev. Not many teams, well, no teams do that to them, do they?
No, they don't. And I thought what was really intriguing about the fallout from this, I think there's always a temptation when you have a significant defeat, in terms of the fact that, obviously Bayern wanted to reach the final, felt they could win the Champions League this season, felt they were peaking at the right time. The temptation is to rip it up. The temptation is to say, well, we need a review. We need to look at things that are going wrong. I actually just thought it didn't play that well on the night. And I look at that squad and I look at that team. He doesn't need major surgery. It probably needs a bit of a zhuzh at fullback, to be honest, because Davies, unfortunately, is having lots of injury problems. That's not his fault. It's just the way. It's probably to do with the game he plays, really, because he's so sprint heavy and he's picking up lots of muscle injuries at the moment. I think they need a viable alternative to him. They're still in contract talks with Conrad Lima. We don't know if he's staying. We know Rafael Guerrero's going to go. So I think there's got to be a rethink there because that's such a key part of what they do. And they need to work out what they're going to do now that Nicholas Jackson's going to move on. But nobody's telling me that front three needs fixing. You know, you've got Kane, who's been absolutely outstanding, 50-odd goals in all competitions. Diaz, as you say, needed a world-class performance from Marquinhos just to even remotely nail him down. And it was just unfortunate for Bayern that it was probably Michael Olise's worst display in a big game this season. I thought... And PSG deserve credit for that, for making it tough for him. But I thought all the little touches, all the little passes that usually on point just weren't there for him. That was my feeling anyway.
Well, of course, there's been that discussion, and shutting down Olise was key to it, definitely. I thought it was interesting, that discussion after the match, that Matvei Safonov, the PSG goalkeeper, had been deliberately putting his kicks out of play to cause an overload on that side of the pitch and stop Olise getting any space. If that's really the case from Luis Enrique, it's genius. Maybe it's leaning into the fact that Matvei Safonov is not a great kicker anyway.
Well, that was my feeling in commentary at the time. I wasn't massively
I know a couple
surprised.
of guys in League One who could do a pretty good job with that, to be honest, and League Two. But look, I think Olise will come back. There's no doubt about that. But I mean, it was sort of as if it was written by Harry Kane, really. He said at the start of the season that we need that little bit more depth. And, you know, they've never complained or moaned about the injuries at any point this season, even though they've had some significant injuries. But the fact is, they went into this season without real backup at fullback. And I think, you know, if they had someone who was the player they thought they were buying when they were getting Sacha Boey, that would definitely help at right back. That, and, you know, it's always the $6 million question, isn't it? How do you back up Harry Kane with someone of requisite quality who can broadly imitate his game and not mind sitting on the bench? I mean, it's an answer to an unanswerable question, really, isn't it?
Jude Bellingham's just had a goal ruled out for offside in El Clasico. Frustration for him. He thought that he'd halved the deficit, but it's still Barcelona 2, Real Madrid 0. Barcelona only need a point to secure the La Liga title. Arsenal against Atletico. It was 1-1 after the first leg. Arsenal won it by 1-0 in that second leg. Bukayo Saka with the only goal of the game. And he'll come to Arsenal in a moment. I was really disappointed with Atletico Madrid. I felt that, you know, defensively they were fine, but we've been talking all season about the punch this team has, the ability this team has to create chances. And I know that Julian Alvarez wasn't fully fit. He picked up a knock, so I could understand maybe why he wouldn't be that effective. But to hook him and Griezmann when they needed a goal, I mean, it's Griezmann's final Champions League game. We know the work rate he puts in, but that just felt a bit odd to me, bringing on Baena and Almada when they did. What was your view of it?
I felt that Julian was a more understandable hook than Griezmann, because I felt if they were going to create anything, it would have been through Antoine Griezmann. He had his moments. Alvarez, I thought, looked, as he often does, a bit flat and a bit tired. There's always the risk you take with someone who plays that much football. But that they were really so struggling to break Arsenal that I think they panicked a little bit, and Diego Simeone panicked a little bit and tried everything at once. I sort of think that is one of the issues of Atletico's season. You could argue actually Atletico's last two seasons, as they've had, you know, he was getting by with scraps really in the transfer market for a long time. And they've been very well funded the last couple of summers. Of course, they spent over 200 million euros last summer. And you think, well, now he's almost got too much choice. And especially in a game where you've got 5 substitutions, there's definitely a tendency to go too early. Look, I thought on the whole, Arsenal played them very smartly. And Arsenal kind of closed out that game and closed out the tie. Not that they weren't superior, because they were far superior, but in the way they just kept them at arm's length and defended really rigorously. You can imagine Simeone thinking, oh, God, I would love to manage this team. That really, Gabriel is his kind of guy. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And William Saliba as well. He would love a Declan Rice. It just, to me, felt as if Atletico missed their chance in the first leg. And really, they were just outdone by a better team with better players.
So we will have coverage of Arsenal against PSG in that Champions League final. That will be in Budapest. Jim Proudfoot, your commentator, alongside the former England captain, Stuart Pearce. It's still Barcelona 2, Real Madrid 0 in El Clasico. Atalanta still 3-0 up at Milan. Coming up, we'll be talking Bundesliga on Trans Europe.
To join Arsenal was the biggest achievement in my career, but the way the things end up was a little bit not nasty. But at the end of the day, I'm happy. They are happy. They know, you know what, life goes on. If you ask me if I regret, I don't regret. But I'm happy also giving them something back, because at the end of the day, if I can't represent and defend my parents, I don't know who would do it for me. So it's kind of doing my job.
You're spot on, Emmanuel. I don't blame you at all. I would have done the same, mate.
Thank you.
Looking at the title race, Manchester City messing up against Everton. How do you think it's going to go? Who do you think will win it in the end?
Who do I think will win it? If you ask me today, I will still tell you that I think Man City will win it, but I would like Arsenal to win it, because it has been over a decade. They have been fighting for that even when I was there. We were fighting for it. Obviously, in April, then sometime in March and April, it's all over. And we drop points at Wigan, at Bolton, wherever you can call it. Then we saw the league sliding out of our hand. But this year, they're doing quite well. And the good thing is that defensively, they are very good. But now they have to win the last 3 games to win the league. And obviously, Man City, again, dropping points at Everton. They will come back stronger. They will manage with their manager, with the players, with the experienced team they had. They will do everything possible to win the last 3 games and wait for Arsenal to drop points so they can be champion. But trust me, it's not going to be an easy task for both of them. Let's see who win. But I wish, for the first time, I wish Arsenal wins it, because they have been working towards this for so long time.
talkSPORT Breakfast returns tomorrow from 6 a.m. as Jeff Stelling and Gabiak Bonlahor are joined by a host of guests as they look back on a huge weekend in the world of sport. That's the talkSPORT Breakfast show tomorrow morning from 6 a.m. Do not miss it. Now, it is still Barcelona 2, Real Madrid 0 in El Clasico. Barcelona closing in on that La Liga title. They only need a point to do that, and if they achieve it, it'll be the first time ever that Barcelona will have won the La Liga title by a result in El Clasico. So really a great motivation for them. Milan have just pulled a goal back against Atalanta, so it's Atalanta 3-1 up now at San Siro in the 89th minute. Let's go to Andy Brassell on the Liga desk. Andy, what's happening in the French top flight? Loads of games going on all at once.
So much is happening. So we've got an equaliser for third-placed Lyon at Toulouse, which was scored by Corentin Tolisso, who is still not in the French.
Get him in that French squad. Get him in.
Get him on the plane.
Yes.
And we've got Lille taking the lead, who are competing with them for third spot. Denis Zakaria own goal, putting them 1-0 up away at Monaco. So plenty going on there. As well, at the bottom, Auxerre have just overtaken Nice. They've come from behind. They've gone 2-1 up. So that would push Nice into third bottom and into the relegation playoff place with, of course, the relegations of Metz and of Nantes already sealed mathematically.
Yeah, we'll be digging further into Liga later in the show, but we're going to talk about Bundesliga now. And the headline, which is Andy Brassell's confection, no Heiden the comeback, which is a reference to Heidenheim, who have had the most remarkable recovery in the last few weeks. Before we get to anything, there are 3 teams that could still go down. Let me just explain to you what happens in the Bundesliga. The team that finishes third bottom is in a playoff with the team that finishes third in the second tier, but the bottom 2 go down. The results that we've had this weekend have left us with the following situation. Dig into the games in a moment. Wolfsburg in the playoff spot, 26 points. Heidenheim, second bottom, 26 points. St. Pauli, bottom, 26 points. So the goal difference, minus 26 for Wolfsburg, minus 29 for Heidenheim and St. Pauli. And Andy, Wolfsburg got away with one to some extent this weekend because they were at home to Bayern and only lost 1-0, which is really quite remarkable.
Yeah, it is. But they'll be coming away from that feeling that they could have got a little bit more, actually. Jonas Urbig, the reserve goalkeeper, who really is putting his hat in the ring in the last 6 months for the possible succession of Manuel Neuer. He had a great game, a really great game, especially in that first half. In the first half, we were also treated to the very unusual sight of Harry Kane missing a penalty. He'd never missed a penalty in the Bundesliga, of course. He missed one in the DFB Pokal and in the Champions League, but only the third penalty he's ever missed for Bayern, mainly due to the fact that Jean-Noel Bolossian, the on-loan defender at Wolfsburg from Leverkusen, dug up the penalty spot and didn't get caught doing it.
Boo.
Well, it was funny, obviously, because you had Tom Bischoff from Bayern saying, this really shouldn't be allowed. And Jonas Urbig going, well, fair enough. They're fighting for their lives, aren't they? Which is maybe easier to say after you've won the game, which they did with talking about Michael Elise before. An absolutely brilliant solo goal from him. We talk about Arjen Robben doing the same thing again and again. You can't stop it. You can say the same about Michael Elise now as well. So
that curler, that Robben-esque curler, by the way, that's becoming just like a standard 3-point shot, isn't it, in the NBA? Like, it's come so naturally to him now that, you're looking at Steph Curry, easy. There's no problem for him at all. And it should be really difficult. It should be really remarkable. We're getting to the stage where when he actually misses from that kind of position, as he did against PSG in midweek,
narrowly,
you're actually thinking, wow, how's he missed that? And he's like shooting from the edge of the area on his left foot. But he does it almost every time.
Yeah, I think he'll have reached Steph status when he hits the shot and turns away before it hits the net.
Yes, that's what we want. That's what we want.
Won't it? But yeah, it's really exciting at the bottom there. Really difficult games for everyone down at the bottom this weekend. St. Pauli finished the weekend bottom, having gone down 2-1 at Leipzig, and they did their best, but they just don't score goals, which is why they're down there really. And then you have Heidenheim putting the cat amongst the pigeons by going and winning at Köln today. Now, I thought they performed really, really well in this game, and given that we've been calling them doomed Heidenheim, and their coach, Frank Schmidt, who's been there since 2007, has been calling them doomed Heidenheim.
For weeks. He's
for
been
months.
saying, it's just football. That's what happens. He's been thinking about how he's going to take the team forward in the second division. They might not be in the second division.
Yeah, it's remarkable. And of course, it's all leading towards the fact that next week they're level on points with catchable goal differences amongst themselves, and St. Pauli hosting Wolfsburg, which is just a remarkable twist, really.
It's going to be so much fun. That is going to be so much fun. And there is obviously a scenario where they could both draw and doom each other, and then Heidenheim could kind of sneak past both of them. So that's going to be cracking. Milan have pulled another goal back, by the way, in stoppage time. Milan 2, Atalanta 3. Christopher Nkunku penalty. So maybe hope for Milan of a late comeback. Now, the race for the top 4 is just as vibrant, because you've got a situation now where Stuttgart, who are currently 4th, are level on points with Hoffenheim on 61 points. Leverkusen 3 back. Stuttgart and Leverkusen, Andy, played each other this weekend. I was on commentary for that, and Stuttgart absolutely battered them, even though Leverkusen took the lead in the first minute. And this was a really alarming performance from Leverkusen, and probably a hint as to why Kesper Yilmaz, the coach, is probably going to lose his job.
Yeah, that's right. Alex Garcia giving them the lead after 34 seconds. And you think, okay, this is the day that they could seal it. And this was the day that they sealed it, but not in the way that they hoped, because now going into the final day, they have to hope for Hoffenheim and Stuttgart to lose while they beat Hamburg, to be able to get them into that 4th spot, which we know after Bayern's defeat this week that there will be no 5th spot equaling Champions League in the Bundesliga as well. So it has become even more of a dogfight than it was already. But you're right. I mean, Hjulmand did really well, I thought, initially, to pick up what had been left to him by Erik ten Hag, which was a total mess after 2 Bundesliga games, 3 competitive games. And since the turn of the year, though, it's been a disaster, really. The performances have been so far off it. And it looked like their big win over Leipzig last week might be a sort of salvation, a get-out-of-jail-free card for them. And just when they get it back into their hands. Look, I think when we get to the end of the season, the right team will have qualified for the Champions League. And it will be Stuttgart, because they have done so well, as they have season after season after season under Sebastian Hoeneß. He's one of the best coaches in Europe, maybe even the best coach in the Bundesliga, I think you can say. But as you say, it's remarkable for a team to be 1-0 up less than a minute into the game and then get the hiding that they did. 3-1 doesn't really tell the half of it. Now, we know that
from 31 minutes to 81 minutes, Andy, they did not have a single goal attempt, Leverkusen.
Well, that's pretty damning, isn't it? And, Hjulmand, even if they were to scrape it on the final day, he wouldn't continue, would he?
No, I don't think so. My suspicion is, and the suspicion of German media is, that maybe he's just a bit too nice for the job, and maybe he's not as ruthless as he needs to be, and maybe it's not what this rather fractious group of new recruits needs to take the club forward, but we shall see. Andy, who is your star of the week in Germany?
It was a tough choice. In the end, I went for Xaver Schlager, because I thought it was interesting that his goal set Leipzig on the way to the win over St. Pauli that secured their place in the Champions League. Interestingly, of course, he will be leaving at the end of the season. So a nice little parting gift.
Yeah, my star of the week is also somebody who will be leaving his club at the end of the season. Niklas Zula, the Borussia Dortmund defender. And he's not just leaving the club, he's leaving the sport. He's going to hang up his boots at the age of 30. Came on as a late substitute in the win over Eintracht Frankfurt. He got a lovely reception. It was his 300th Bundesliga appearance. Somebody who I think has been very unfairly derided at times in his career. for his fitness issues and what have you. But this is a guy that was a bit of a unicorn, really, as a centre-back because he could play, had really great technical quality. He was tall, he was big and strong, but also he was very, very quick. And I remember speaking to guys at Hoffenheim when he first broke through, and they were really quite staggered by his ability. He went on to win the Bundesliga, he went on to win the Champions League, so he's had a very good career indeed. It's still Barcelona 2, Real Madrid 0 in El Clasico, and we're in the 9th minute of stoppage time at San Siro. It's still Milan 2, Atalanta 3. Coming up after the break, we're going to talk La Liga on Trans Europe Express.
Let's not worry about other teams. I'm sorry, West Ham, not our problem. Okay, you lost 3-0 to Brentford. You've got 3 games. Go and beat Arsenal on the weekend. Do it yourself. Aston Villa, worry about Aston Villa. And the players, they took it easy. My daughter was there in the whole end. She's like, Dad, why is everyone walking? It was walking football from Aston Villa. But then when you see a performance like that, where they've put in 100% every player, you don't care about that. Up the Villa!
Up the Villa!
Up the Villa! Istanbul!
Do you want the hands mask? Put the hands mask on.
Gary's putting the hand mask on.
Up the Villa! Up the Villa! Up the European Villa! Istanbul! Istanbul! Let's go! Let's go, baby! Boys,
do as anyone see. Do as anyone see.
Yeah, got it. Go on, Gary.
Let's set it up for Gary.
Sorry. Has anyone seen Maximus Scott? Where are you, Max? We need some news. Robin Hood, the Prince of Thieves, Sherwood Forest, Friar Tuck. Where are you, Friar? The original boots chemist. Hooters. Is Hooters closed? I used to open Hooters. Close Hooters. Shut it down. Matt Ford, do us a favour, mate. Stuart Broad, where are you? Chris Wokes, better player. Where are you? Tricky Trees. Rock City. HB Sauce, where are you? Notts Forest.
And Big H Marcus killed me. Big H Marcus killed me. You're listening to Trans Europe Express on talkSPORT. It is still Barcelona 2, Real Madrid 0 in El Clasico, but I can tell you it would have been 3, 4, 5-0 if it hadn't been for Thibaut Courtois, who has made a string of saves. He's just denied Robert Lewandowski a third goal for Barcelona. Barca closing in on the La Liga title. It is finished at San Siro. It's finished Milan 2, Atalanta 3. So Milan in serious danger of not even qualifying for the Champions League, having been part of the title race for most of the season. Let's head to the Liga desk. It's Andy Brassell. Andy, what big score lines do we have as we're reaching the end in France?
Speaking of not qualifying for the Champions League, Kev, Lyon are now 2-1 down at Toulouse. And with Lille winning at Monaco, that would knock them down to 4th position, which is just a qualifier, not automatic Champions League place. Also, huge goal at the Parc des Princes. Desiree Doué has finally put PSG in front. They're 1-0 up against Brest. And that means they could sort of clinch the title tonight. Not mathematically, but barring a huge swing in goal difference, there'd be 6 points in front with 2 games left and a far superior goal difference to Lens.
Now, after the La Liga title race is decided, we're going to talk about El Clasico and how that game has gone, with Barcelona 2-0 up in that one. But we're going to concentrate on the rest of La Liga first. And the headline for this is Panda Pop, because the man they call the Panda, Borja Iglesias, the big striker for Celta Vigo, scored a wonderful goal to win the game at Atletico Madrid, Andy. It was the only goal of the game. Wonderful ball lifted over the top of Jan Oblak and in. It's another defeat for Atletico Madrid, but of course their season's pretty much over. But it does keep Celta, now that we know there are 5 Champions League spots in La Liga, keeps them in the race.
Yeah, I mean, there's real novelty, I think, in Atletico Madrid getting absolutely mugged in their own stadium all over again, because we know how strong they are at the Metropolitano. But they've kind of helped a few teams out as they've had all their eyes on Europe in recent weeks, and they've been assured of a place in the top 4. So Elche have done very well to get a win off them. Sevilla have done very well to get a win off them. And Diego Simeone must be tearing his hair out, because of course he doesn't like to lose any game. And they played well, they created chances. Radu had a really good game in goal for the visitors. And then, as you say, one of the best moves of the game, and Borja Iglesias with a really brilliant finish as well. So what this means is, with Betis losing a 2-goal lead a Real Sociedad, and they could have easily lost that game actually in the closing stages. It means that Betis are 4 points in front of Celta in a 5th place, but with only 2 games left. So look, Betis are still in the box seat, but Celta, who are having a really good season, are still in it.
Remarkable week for Sevilla, Andy, because going into the week they were in deep trouble, but they've had a couple of really significant results since then. They've actually jumped into mid-table.
Technically, that's true, of course.
Still in trouble, but jumped into mid-table.
But look, this is just such an incredible race for the relegation places. Now, again, I think no one's mathematically gone. Oviedo almost gone because of only their 0-0 draw against Getafe today. I think Getafe are the last team you really want to play in that situation. But as you say, an incredible week for Sevilla, because they start in the bottom 3. It's almost a win or go home match against Real Sociedad on Monday night. They played 2 home games this week. And they play really well against Real Sociedad. A winner by Alexis Sanchez, 37 years old, who's had a very influential week for them, we have to say, because he made a difference after coming on as a substitute as well against Espanyol yesterday. They were 1-0 down to a goal by Tyrese Dolan, of course, formerly of Blackburn Rovers, and lovely somersault to celebrate as well. But then the comeback, with Alexis at the heart of it, a winning goal scored very nicely by Akor Adams in stoppage time. And really, I think we know that everything institutionally with Sevilla is falling to bits. You have to remind yourself that this team that has been circling the drain for a bit is the winner of 6 UEFA Cup / Europa Leagues in this century. It's remarkable, really. And here they are, just really scrapping to stay in the division. Of course, there are some big names down there. Valencia, who we'll maybe come to in a second as well. But I think really, when we talk about Sevilla's wins this week at Nervión, we have to say it's all about the fans, because the fans who have just been driven to distraction by the incompetent running of their club, which really sadly is like run by local people as well. They're just idiots.
Yeah.
And but they all came out in force for these games, filled every seat, made loads of noise, and I feel that made all the difference.
You mentioned Valencia. Obviously, Sevilla a huge club. Valencia is as well. I mean, you know, you think of those great days under Rafa Benitez, you think to the likes of Ruben Baraja, Pablo Aimar, David Albelda, all of that. That's wonderful team.
Yeah.
And yet they've been circling the drain for a while, but a huge win for them as well.
Yeah, big away at Athletic this weekend. So, look, I'm just going to read you through the bottom of the table because it's absolutely fascinating. I mean, in terms of actual pointage, anyone up to from 8th downwards could still get relegated. Now, that's not going to happen because there's such a logjam as well. As we say, Oviedo are probably gone. They are right down there. They're on 29 points, so they're 9 from safety at the moment. Again, it would take a massive goal turnaround and everything to go right for them. Not going to happen. So you have Levante, who won this weekend. They're second bottom, 36. Alaves, 37. Girona 38. They play tomorrow against the Rayo Vallecano. One of the others are in the mix. Elche 39. Mallorca 39. Espanyol, who haven't won in 17 games, having challenged for Europe in the first part of the season, 39. Sevilla 40. So to show you how close it was, as you were saying there before, Kev, when they were 1-0 down to Espanyol, Sevilla were level on points with third from bottom Alaves, although they had the better head-to-head. And they won, and they went up to 12th. It's just
Absolutely remarkable. Barcelona have won La Liga. They are back-to-back champions in Spain. They have beaten Real Madrid by 2-0. Marcus Rashford with a wonderful opener, and then Ferran Torres with the second goal. So Barcelona with the ultimate win, really, for them, beating their bitter rivals, Real Madrid, to wrap up El Clasico and wrap up that La Liga title. Congratulations to them and to Hansi Flick. We'll be digging a little bit deeper into that success just after the break, right here on Trans Europe Express.
The performances that you've seen from Chelsea. I mean, the Brighton game.
You can't defend what Chelsea have done.
Why are they giving Caicedo an extra year?
You cannot defend what Chelsea have done. There is nothing positive to say about the way the club has behaved and the club has been run, the club have played this season. There is nothing positive.
You can have 3 or 4 maybe that you see in a team that are not doing it, but there's so many games this season I've seen Chelsea players, every single player is not running around. Yeah. Every single player is not trying.
Gabby,
every single
the
player is not
statistics are
tracking
clear.
back.
They have been outrun in every single Premier League game. After 10 games, the alarm bells should be ringing.
And in fairness, you can moan about the way the club is run. You can moan about the model. You can moan about the revolving door of managers, which we were told, by the way, when they hired Graham Potter, they weren't going to be that club anymore. They've got worse. But there still has to be individual responsibility. There still has to be professional pride. And there isn't in that dressing room.
You got Fofana getting taken off in a recent game.
Well,
and he's throwing his toys
I
out
have
the
to
pram,
say,
like,
I have to say,
he's garbage.
He's got a history of falling out with everybody.
Incredible,
Bad
isn't it?
signing. What? Signed him
Who signed
off the
him?
back of a long-term
money.
injury, and guess what happened? He got injured.
He didn't play for nearly 2 years.
Who could have seen that coming?
But even look at all Chelsea's centre-half options. Listen, Chalobah, decent player, not at the level where Chelsea want to get to. Badiashile, not good enough. The Sassy, who's at West Ham on loan, not good enough.
He's actually played quite well for West Ham.
I know, but where Chelsea want to get to, all of those centre-halves, you're looking at it and saying, that's not a backline.
Especially
or
when
a
you spent
goalkeeper.
2.5 billion
Exactly.
quid.
How much do all those players
Well, they
cost?
signed the goalkeeper, Robert Sanchez, who Brighton made no real effort to keep.
Hamilton, now at Ferrari, dares to dream of a record 8th F1 world title. The Tifosi will be hoping the Brits can bring glory back to Italy. To many, Ferrari and Formula One are inseparable. They're the only team in the sport today to have competed in the first World Championship in 1950, are the most successful team in history, and have built some absolutely gorgeous cars. Their first driver's title was won in 1952 by Alberto Ascari. Considered one of F1's most dominant and best-loved champions, he drove the iconic Ferrari 500 and defended his title the year after. It was Juan Manuel Fangio in his Ferrari 250 who secured the team's next driver's title in 1956. Remember, he was world champion 5 times with 4 different teams. Mike Hawthorne, Phil Hill and John Surtees also won titles for Ferrari in the 50s and 60s, and the cars back then were beautiful, and they even sounded great, didn't they? Anyway, Ferrari went 11 years without winning a title until Niki Lauda won in 1975 in the iconic 312T. Throughout much of the 80s and 90s, though, Ferrari looked like they'd never go all the way again. Le Professeur Alain Prost came pretty close in 1990, but lost out to his bitter rival and former teammate at McLaren, Ayrton Senna. It was only when John Todt recruited a swathe of staff from outside of Italy, including Michael Schumacher, that the glory days returned 21 years after their last driver's title. The turn of the century saw the prancing horse sprint to an unprecedented 5 consecutive championship doubles. And after Schumacher left, Kimi Raikkonen reclaimed the driver's title immediately. But despite employing 1,500 people, the Iceman remains the last Ferrari world champion. So, 16 constructors' titles, 7 more than McLaren, and 15 drivers' titles, 4 more than, again, McLaren. Ferrari are truly Formula One's top team. Forza Ferrari.
You're listening to Danny Kelly's Trans-Europe Express. I'm Kevin Hatchard, sitting in for Danny tonight alongside the European football expert Andy Brassell. Barcelona have just beaten Real Madrid 2-0 in El Clasico. They've been crowned once again as Spanish champions. We'll dig into that. We'll bring you the latest from Serie A and Liga, and we'll hear from the Como boss, Cesc Fabregas. Como have secured European qualification for the first time in their history. It's all coming up on Trans-Europe Express. Congratulations to Barcelona. They have beaten Real Madrid by 2-0 in El Clasico, and they have therefore clinched the La Liga title with room to spare. It's back-to-back La Liga titles for them under Hansi Flick. It was a great start for them. Brilliant goal from Marcus Rashford to open the scoring. Ferran Torres double the advantage. And Andy, this could have been a more significant win for Barcelona, and that speaks to not only Barcelona's quality, but the mess that Real Madrid are in.
Yeah, it does, I suppose. And look, I thought Real Madrid did as well as could be expected, which I think really underlines the gap between these two sides. Points-wise, after this, by the way, it's 14 points. And I think, to me, that feels like a reasonable expression of how much better Barcelona have been than Real Madrid this season. I thought it was, I guess, a mature performance from Barcelona, really, because I thought were clinical, they were smart, they defended well. Of course, you look at their high line and how frequently they catch people offside. Of course, Jude Bellingham having that goal ruled out in the second half, she said. At the beginning, brilliant goal by Marcus Rashford from a free kick to put them in front in the first place before Ferran Torres got the second. And really, I think, this has just underlined everything we know about Barcelona. That Rashford free kick, it felt like a good moment, really, to underline how well they did last summer in the transfer market. With limited means, they expect to have a little more this summer. But the fact that Rashford was a bit of a, oh, really? Sort of signing for a lot of people, where actually Deco set his stall out at the start of last summer, and we've said it before on here, said the thing we need more than most is cover for Rafinha and Lamine Yamal. And they come to the game where they need to clinch it. Rafinha is only a substitute, and he comes on a little bit later in his latest comeback from injury. Lamine Yamal is wearing a rather fetching pink Stone Island in what they call street clothes in the NBA. And so for Rashford to show up, it's the perfect moment to say, thanks for putting your trust in me. You did the right thing.
And it's the perfect moment for Manchester United to say we're sticking by the figure that's in that clause to make the loan move permanent. Just want to talk about Hansi Flick for a little bit, the Barcelona coach, because it was bittersweet for him because sadly his father has recently passed away. That's been revealed today, but he was at the game and he was part of those celebrations. So that must have been an incredibly difficult moment for him, even though obviously joyous to secure the title. This is a guy that did great things at Bayern Munich, didn't leave Bayern because he was a bad coach, didn't leave Bayern because he was difficult to get on with, left Bayern because he'd had a difference of opinion with the sporting director there. But he'd won everything there was to win in his time at Bayern. But when he took the Germany job, I think he was a little bit unlucky with what happened in Qatar in the World Cup. But he was lampooned to some extent with some of the kind of David Brent-esque moments in the documentary that they made of Germany's World Cup campaign, talking about geese and their incredible teamwork. But I think what he's done in the last 2 years, Andy, is he's reminded us, A, you might have big misgivings about the high line, and at times I do, but he's a great tactician who believes in his method of football. But more importantly than that, he's a great man manager, and he has absolutely managed to get the best out of that group of players.
Yeah, he is. And I just wonder if international management didn't really suit him because you don't get enough time with the players. I think you can see the closeness he's fostered with his players at Bayern and now at Barcelona. To be able to get elite level players to play out of position and make a go of it, I think he's an unbelievable talent. I mean, really, he's like, I've said this before, he's like the Bielsa who wins things, really, isn't it? Because
yeah, the ideologue who's actually got the trophies to go with it, yeah.
Yeah, he's able to go to players, well, I see this in you. Maybe you don't see this in you, but I see this in you, and it will work. And you can say that with Alphonso Davies, David Alaba. Now you can say it with Rafinha, Gerard Martin, even, so many players who he has helped to make better players and really has used in a way to make his team better. I mean, he's perfect for Barcelona in this era because for an elite level club, they've not got no resources, but they've had to make do and mend to a certain extent.
Relatively, yeah. That's absolutely true. Rashford's a great example because they brought him in, and I think what they were impressed by before he'd even kicked a ball was the fact that he was prepared to be patient while they tried to register him. That's an extraordinary situation for a major club to be in, that they sign a player and don't even know if they're going to be able to play him in La Liga. But they got there in the end. And I guess if we go back a bit, if we go to the time, Andy, when they were pulling financial levers and they were trying to free up funds and they were trying to wriggle under the kind of, the restrictions of that strict La Liga salary cap, Joan Laporta made a bet, didn't he? He effectively said, well, we could go small and we could release a load of players and we could try and do it with the kids from La Masia and not much else. Or we could try and stay big and try and compete for the big stuff. And hopefully that's going to work out. And in the end, that did work out.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because when they signed Rafinha, he looked like a luxury player, really. He looked in the latest of the line of Ousmane Dembélé, Felipe Coutinho, Antoine Griezmann, mega money players that they didn't really need. I wonder what would have happened if those three had met Hansi Flick as Bayern coach.
That's it. Sometimes you need the right moment, the right coach. I mean, Coutinho was never played in the right position, I guess. Dembele had a few. I mean, I still maintain, actually, his spell at Barcelona was pretty good. It was just injuries, and Xavi didn't really want to lose him, did he? So it's an interesting one. You're absolutely right. I think sometimes the right moment, the right coach, and that's the problem that Real Madrid have at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, what would Ousmane Dembele in Barcelona done with an alarm clock, really?
Yes,
like a lot more, I think. But look, I mean, obviously he's gone on to fulfill his potential elsewhere. But going back to that make do and men thing, interesting that Joao Cancelo apparently has become the first player to win a title in 4 of Europe's top 5 leagues. Of course, previously won the title at Juventus, Manchester City, Bayern, and now Barcelona. In his previous spell at Barcelona, that they didn't win La Liga. So I guess that's another one, and another one where they will be trying to pay pennies on the dollar to bring him in permanently. We'll have to wait and see. But it is remarkable when they've had this era of struggle, financially, economically, that Real Madrid really have done everything right economically over the past 5 or 6 years. You know, they've run down all their big contracts, and they got rid of Bale, Isco, Özil, and Cristiano Ronaldo eventually, and Karim Benzema, and having rebuilt the stadium, having gone and signed a load of young players who you thought would see them through the next little bit. The 2 stars that they couldn't do without in the end were Luka Modric and Toni Kroos. I mean, that has become clear. I think when we talked about leadership, when we talked in the opening section about what's gone wrong for them off the field, talent-wise, they're not a million miles off. But I think in terms of spirit, organisation, tactics, leadership, that they feel a very, very long way away from Barcelona.
A couple of players I have to talk about when it comes to Barcelona. Obviously, Lamine Yamal, but Pedri, player of the game in El Clasico tonight, just an unbelievable footballer. If those two can stay fit, and if Barcelona can hang on to them, and I see no reason why they can't, certainly in the short and medium term, I mean, they're going to be special, special players for that club for years to come.
Yeah, and funnily enough, of course, we've seen from Barcelona, not just this era of Barcelona, but Barcelona down the years generally, the collective trumps all, really. And I think really what depends on them being able to develop to a certain degree, and we saw him, again, have a very influential game tonight, Gavi. I think him being next to Pedri is absolutely vital. So he can do all the physical work to really protect Pedri and let him do what he's good at. I think one of the things that set the tone in this game, early challenge where he absolutely smashed Jude Bellingham, and he sort of left his print on the game. And when you think of how much football Gavi has missed over the last couple of seasons with the ACL and the injury that's then hampered him this season, to get him fully fit and to get him in a position where he can play 45, 50 games a season for Barcelona will be huge. Also interesting to see what happens next with Ferran Torres, because Ferran Torres has got a year left on his contract. They've shown no particular will to extend him so far, and so his people have been looking at various options, which, you know, when he scores so consistently,
he's mega underrated. Mega underrated.
He is. Well, I think a lot of people misunderstand the player he is. They look at him and they think he's a winger. But both Luis Enrique and Pep Guardiola, and also actually Hansi Flick, have said, look, this guy's a centre forward.
Yeah.
Just because he's not like 6'5" and built like Ibrahimovic or Adebayo Akinfenwa, he's an authentic centre forward, and he's proved that again and again. And given that they are at a point where they will either re-sign Lewandowski on a much cheaper deal, or more likely let him go, I suspect he'll pop up in MLS next, and it has been diminishing returns, even though he's gone along at pretty much a goal a start this season. Lewandowski's not started that many games, and they will be keen to get themselves out from under the financial burden of his contract. What they do next, the striker that Barcelona go for this summer is the interesting thing, I think, and one of the most interesting things in this summer's transfer market.
We skipped La Liga Stars of the Week to tell you about Barcelona winning El Clasico and winning the league title, so it seems only fair that Barcelona or Real Madrid should give a bit back now. So, Andy, just going back to your La Liga star of the week, who was it?
Well, the reality is we all know who Barcelona should go for Robert Lewandowski's successor. Should be Vedat Muriqi of Mallorca.
You're not even joking, and nor should you be. I actually could see that working personally.
Look, he if you look at where they had, I know they were broker then, but when they had Luc de Jong, who actually did a really good job for them, scored some important goals, even if he didn't score them in great volume, much as he did for Sevilla as well. And Porto, before he got his ACL, were hoping that he would do the same thing for them this season. Muriqi is an extraordinary player, a Kosovan centre-forward who we talk about a lot on this show, we absolutely love. Scored a vital goal against Villarreal today to get them a point and keep them going at the bottom of the table. They're out of the bottom three at the moment, but like so many other teams, as we said before, they're very much in the mix. They could get 2-3 years out of Muriqi, and he's rough and he's tough. And by the way, imagine scoring 22 La Liga goals for Mallorca.
Yeah, it's phenomenal.
Amazing.
And look, it worked for Joselu at Real Madrid. So there you go. The template has already been laid down. Mine, by the way, bit of an unusual one this, but bear with me. Sergio Herrera, the goalkeeper for Osasuna. Now, Osasuna were 2-0 up very early on away at relegation threatened Levante. Levante came back to win 3-2. In the midst of that incredible comeback for the home team, Herrera, the Osasuna goalkeeper, came up with one of the maddest dashes from his penalty area I've seen in a long, long time. He's only a few yards away from halfway. He's going to get to the ball first, and you're thinking, okay, he's surely going to clear this with his foot. No, dear listener. He dives full length, Superman style, and paws the ball away. The referee, dumbfounded, had no option but to show the red card. If you haven't seen it, please do. Sergio Herrera with a great piece of goalkeeping in Levante 3, Osasuna 2. Coming up after the break, we are going to talk...
Real Madrid striker Kylian Mbappe, who has faced criticism from his own fans after taking a trip to Italy on a mega yacht with his partner. He's recovering from a hamstring injury he suffered on April the 24th and was given some days off last week. He arrived back in Madrid on Sunday, shortly before kickoff, when Madrid played away against Espanyol. Many fans thought Mbappe should not have taken a break and should have stuck with the team, going through a difficult time at this particular time. Alvaro Arbeloa said, well, in their free time, each player does what they see fit, and I don't get involved with that. Mbappe's representative said part of the criticism was based on an over-interpretation of elements related to a recovery period, strictly supervised by the club, without reflecting the reality of Kylian's commitment and the work that he puts in every day for the team. So that was Mbappe and Real Madrid. But then there's Liverpool. What was going on with them? Danny's old club. Liverpool captain Virgil van Dijk had to defend some of his teammates who were criticised for being abroad last week on a day off as they headed into the Manchester United game, a game they ultimately lost by 3-2. It was put to Van Dijk that some of his teammates had gone on holiday last week. He says, I'm not sure it was a holiday, it was a city trip. But I think if you're one day off and you don't have many days off, then you decide what you want to do with your family. We're not kids. Everyone's an adult. I wish we had a couple more days off at times because I think it works both ways.
You're listening to Trans Europe Express on talkSPORT, and we're going to look at Serie A now. And the headline for this is Roma roar back, because Roma were in deep, deep trouble away at Parma, Andy, and they came back to win. And once again, Daniel Marlon, who Aston Villa fans might be thinking, we could have kept hold of him and he could have done very, very well for us. He was remarkable once again in this game.
Yeah, it's something else, the Marlon story, actually, because you look at the fact that he arrived in January and already he's the joint second top scorer in Serie A. It's remarkable after those 2 goals today. So he's just behind Lautaro Martinez and level with Marcus Thuram after those 2 goals at Parma. Look, it looked a cruise for Roma early on. They needed to respond to Como's win earlier. It's very tight in the Champions League race, as we'll get to in a second. Marlon scored in the first half, his customary goal. But then Parma came back in the second. They took the lead after equalising from Gabriel Strafezza. They went in front with 3 minutes to go, which was quite a nice moment, actually, because Mandela Keita, he scored his first goal in Italy and his first goal in the pro game for about, I calculate, about 4 years, with his mum and dad there as well.
So sweet. It was really lovely, wasn't it?
It was nice, wasn't it? But Roma came back. Bear in mind, in the 93rd minute, they were 2-1 down. They ended up coming back to win. And it was an equaliser by Divine Wrench and then a penalty given on VAR review and scored by Marlon. And that felt actually quite a pivotal moment, what happened, because, of course, we talked earlier about Jean-Noël Bolossian and damaging the penalty spot. And there tends to be a sort of guarder of the ball and guarder of the penalty spot before the penalty taker, doesn't there?
Yes.
Now, Paulo Dybala picked up the ball straight away because he's Roma's superstar, because he always takes the pens. And then when the referee clears the penalty area and they're ready to take, he gives it to Marlon. And it felt like kind of a passing of the torch, actually. Now, we know that Gianpiero Gasperini, who, of course, his influence at Roma is increasing with the departure of Claudio Ranieri, who he didn't really get on with, and probably the sporting director, Ricky Massara, at the end of the season. And he was looking ever so jolly. He's really showboating on the touchline, I felt, Gasperini. He wants to keep Dybala for next season on what will be a reduced contract. Although Dybala said afterwards, as far as I'm concerned, next week at home to Lazio, by the way, will be my last home game with Roma. So he's very much fishing for an offer, I think it's fair to say. But to see him pass the ball on to Marlon and Marlon do the business, it felt a huge moment. And so what we have as well with Como, who, as we'll come to in a second, have secured at least some sort of European football for next season. The Roma result is made even better for them with Milan's defeat last night. So this is where we are. We know Inter are up and away in terms of being champions, 15 points clear pending Napoli's game tomorrow night. So we have Napoli having played a game less on 70 in second place, Juventus 68, Milan 67, Roma 67, Como 65. 2 games left. That's so tight.
Let's talk about that defeat for Milan, Andy, because, I mean, they were 3-0 down at one stage at home to Atalanta, who are a good side, no doubt about it.
But out of the race.
Yeah, and in the last few weeks, I mean, this has been an extraordinary collapse, hasn't it?
It has. And really, I guess the only good thing to come out of tonight for them is at least they've been putting the ball in the back of the net on this occasion, because the goals have really dried up and they tried something different again. Today, they went with Santiago Jimenez back in the team, and him and Rafael Leao up front. And when they were 2-0 down at half-time, they dragged off Ruben Loftus-Cheek and stuck on Christopher Nkunku, another striker who they're not really convinced by, but, you know, needs must when the devil drives and all that. What can they do? And, you know, you had Nkunku scoring one of those goals late on to get them back in it, but that was in stoppage time pretty late. Strahinja Palic scored the other one, a defender. So they've got a massive problem, and there is so much pressure on them to get there. Now, look, if you go back a month and a half, they were still in the title race, and now it looks as if they might not even make the top 4. And like I said, Max Allegri, who has had a sort of Conte-esque season of no European football, to coach the players, to work on everything. And the defence, like, massively improved in the first half of the season. They look really good. But all of a sudden, you've got problems with Leao not really firing. Yeah. Christian Pulisic hasn't scored since December, which is a huge problem for the US as well, I think, going into
quite shocked by that, because I must admit I am. I thought he looked really sharp in the opening months of the season. He's just completely fallen away.
Yeah, he did. And it felt like it suited him to be the main guy for them as well. But, you know, you've got so many good forward players completely underachieving. I mean, you've seen Christopher Nkunku do it to a very high level in the Bundesliga. We've seen Santiago Jimenez, a player who they chased for a number of windows before they got him from Feyenoord just over a year ago, and then decided pretty much straight away that, no, he's not really good enough for us.
That was really bizarre, right? Because I get it. It's the whole Afonso Alves conundrum when you have a player who scores goals in the Netherlands and you bring them in and you're not quite sure. But you looked at him and thought, right, well, he's got everything you need. He's got the physicality, he's got the finishing ability, and you kind of think
goals in the Champions League.
Yeah, and they just seemed to completely write him off as soon as he arrived, which speaks to me that they aren't profiling players properly. They don't really know what they're bringing in or what they actually want.
Yeah, I mean, you look how many different types of striker they brought in. I know you need variety, but they brought in Santiago Jimenez, Christopher Nkunku, who was only developed into a striker as his career's gone on. Nicholas Füllkrug as well, of course. And even tried Rafael Leao, who's not a striker, in a striker's position, really. So it goes back to, I guess, what we were talking about with Barcelona and how Hansi Flick is such a great developer of players. Now, of course, look, he only arrived in the summer, so we can't pin all this on Max Allegri. But the fact is, Milan as a club need to be developing players. They haven't got limitless money. They're not the power they used to be. To get players in and say, yeah, I don't reckon this is the guy, after you've broken the bank to get them, it's just strange behaviour.
Yeah, it's very odd. We are going to dig a bit deeper into Como's first ever European qualification and the reasons behind that after the break. But Andy, who in Serie A is your star of the week?
Well, I guess it's got to be Dusan Vlahovic for keeping Juventus still in the mix. Talking of having a load of striking talent and not knowing what to do with it, that's been Juventus for a lot of the season. It's looked like it's looked like he's going to be on the way out. But really, Spalletti talked afterwards and said, you know, this is the guy we need. Vlahovic is, our team doesn't look the same without him. So I think they will reach a compromise contract. He's run out of contract in the summer. Scored after 11 seconds in this game at Lecce to get them over the line and get them a much needed win.
That's crazy though, right? Because for most of the season, the kind of perceived wisdom has been Vlahovic is going to go. They're desperate to get his wages off the wage bill. Is there just not a big market for him, do you think?
Well, if you look at the other clubs that are interested in him, we've had like inquiries from Bayern. Barcelona, of course, are looking to replace Robert Lewandowski. But I guess unless he feels he's going to be the main guy at either of those. Look, the original contract he's on at Juventus, it's not just Juventus don't pay those wages anymore. Nobody pays those wages anymore. And no one's going to be paying those wages for him as well. So maybe as time's gone by, that if the market's a little bit colder than he thought, maybe that's brought them a little bit closer together.
And my star of the week is a striker as well, Jamie Vardy, who got the opener for Cremonese. Come on. In that 3-0 win over Pisa. What that's done is it's given Cremonese a genuine chance of avoiding the drop. They are just behind Lecce in that race for survival. Coming up after the break on Trans Europe Express, we're going to hear from Cesc Fabregas about his coach.
I'm going to go Friday after work pint, number 5, mate.
Number 5.
There he is. So do you want it? You ready?
Yeah, go on.
In number 5.
Number 5.
Friday after work pint. You've worked hard all week. You know, you want to go there, just have that first pint. You've earned it.
Number 4.
Beer garden pint. This can happen any time of day.
Good pint.
Any time, any day of the week. Yeah. Saturday afternoon, meet the lads. Sunday afternoon.
Good pint.
Right, sun's got to be
Number 3.
Football pint. The football pint's in. You meet your lads, meeting up Saturday afternoon or Sunday, whatever it is. First pint, in you go. Hey, we're going to get a beer again.
Yeah.
Number 2.
The holiday pint. Mr. O'Hara wants that one. Yes. When you get there, you've done the journey. You've gone through everything you need to do. Passport, security checks, the journey. You get out, you smell, you feel a bit grubby. Don't care. You get on wherever you get to then you get to your destination. Bags get dropped. Sit there. You've earned this pint.
Yeah, it's a good pint.
Good pint.
That's my favourite.
There you go.
Number 1.
Yeah.
Airport. It's the only one, mate. Airport pint. It's the only one. You're there. It doesn't matter what time. Not with lads. No. Doesn't matter who you're with. If you're with me, 5 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, 3, whatever it is, that's the point.
Do you know what's disappointing in this whole, ranking that we've done?
Have I missed something?
Yeah, well, your missus. There's not one pint that involves your missus. Not one.
I'm at the
Where's
airport.
Hannah in this?
I'm at the airport with her.
No, you're not. You're not at the airport with her. You're with Razor Ruddock.
No, hold on.
Hold on.
Let me
Hannah's involved in none of these pints.
No, hold on. I'm at the airport with her, definitely. I'm definitely with a holiday pint. I'm definitely with football. I'm definitely not.
The latest episode of How to Win the World Cup has landed. This week, Matt Ford's joined by comedian Maisie Adam as they delve into the strange world of wags with wag royalty Lizzie Cundy. That's the How to Win the World Cup podcast, available now on the talkSPORT app or your favourite podcast provider. Because they have congratulations to Como. They've qualified for Europe for the first time ever through Serie A. So Cesc Fabregas has done an excellent job there. Andy, it's a really interesting situation for Como because they are a club that has come up through the divisions of late, but they have some serious money behind them, and they are part of a bigger marketing play around the Como area in general.
Yeah, so it's the Jarum Group who own them, and it's an Indonesian company, and they've got billionaire backing basically, which is huge, especially in the current context of Serie A, because you look at a promoted team who everyone knew wouldn't go down. I suppose maybe the best example is not even Paris FC, because they had a bit of a flirt with relegation earlier this season. Probably Leipzig is the best.
They were never going to go back down.
Yeah, of course they didn't finish second in their first season like Leipzig, Como, but you knew they would be solid. They have good scouting, good connections, and like Leipzig, they've lent heavily into buying and developing young players, which I think has been really, really important for them. Fabregas is a big part of that, of course. He's not just a coach, he's a shareholder as well. So he's invested in the club in more than just an emotional sense. And he's done a really, really good job this season. They've recruited smartly. They've done well out of using their money wisely, because, they spent the fifth most amount in Serie A last season, and at the start of the season last summer, and they spent more than anyone else in January as well. So in an era where, as we were saying before, Milan don't have limitless means, and lots of the other clubs don't either, there's a real opportunity. There was always an opportunity for them to do something, and they're making the most of it. And as you say, they're just trying to open Como up to the world. Of course, they're developing the stadium, which is right on the lake, and they're trying to make those international connections. So they had the Como Cup going back to last summer, a pre-season tournament where they invited a load of international teams, including Celtic as well. So as you say, they're trying to sell it as a tourist destination and a football tourism destination. If you think back to the early QSI years at PSG, it was all about getting, Jay-Z, Beyonce, Beckham, DiCaprio in the stands.
Brassell.
Of course, Beckham before he was a player. Yeah, that's right. I was invited once or twice. And really, they've done the same thing, haven't they? You look at Thierry Henry, who again has got equity in the club. Keira Knightley's been there.
Benedict Cumberbatch, he's been there, I think. Spotted him.
Exactly. Taking 5 minutes off from arguing with cyclists.
Cesc Fabregas, linked with Leipzig, linked with Leverkusen in the summer, was hot property, no doubt about that. But this is not a typical story, is it? Because this is a guy that has investment in the club, and therefore that's a different dynamic, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And I think for him to feel really involved in the project is a huge thing. Now, look, I think when you look at the clubs who were in for him last summer, as you say, Leipzig were very keen. Leverkusen thought they had him at one stage, although they were incorrect. Inter were very interested as well before that they ended up going with Christian Kivu. And so these are not small clubs who are giving him the opportunity. But he's in no rush. And, he said, going back a couple of weeks ago, well, look, I really hope the club want to keep me on for next season, which obviously they do. But, to say I want to continue here, there's no ambiguity. There's none of the stock answers of, well, it depends what's out there, or I'm very happy here and my mind is only on this club for the moment, which is the normal one, isn't it? So if you're an optimist, you can say, oh, he wants to stay. But if you're a realist, you can say, well, if a big club comes in, he's going. He will be Como coach next season. I don't think there's any doubt about that, is there?
Well, Cesc Fabregas spoke exclusively to Rory Jennings on his YouTube channel. The Como manager opening up to Rory about the challenges he had guiding the club from Serie B to Serie A.
It's not that I'm a young coach, it's that I'm completely new at the job.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was a player 3 months before, and now I'm coaching a team that where we wanted, together with the president, get promoted to Serie A straight away after 21 years. So 100% it was a challenge. After that, yes, I agree that thinking about it now, we went up a little bit too early. Even for us, we thought that one more year in Serie B and then get ready, because what you see here now, 2 years ago, it didn't exist. We didn't have a gym, we didn't have a restaurant, we didn't have pitches. Sometimes we turned up here in the morning to train and we couldn't train because the pitch were not ready or were iced or something like this. So there are a lot of problems that nobody knows, because we try to always kind of not hide it, but always not to talk about it. But we started basically at the, not the ground floor, -10. I always say so.
That was the Como manager Cesc Fabregas there, speaking exclusively to Rory Jennings. To listen to that full interview, you can head over to Rory Jennings' YouTube channel. Now, much as I don't want to disagree with Cesc Fabregas, of course, Andy, I'm not sure about that, about them reaching Serie A year early, because it's worked out for them, because they've been able to build a competitive squad. They have got through to the semi-final of the Coppa Italia. They were very close to knocking out Inter, which would have been a hell of a result to reach the final. And he's managed to do that with some really impressive players. Guys like Baturina, Nico Paz has been the star probably, hasn't he? You look at Duvikas, who's been sensational up front. They've put together a really good team in a very short space of time.
Yeah, and I think it's been the combination of contacts and great scouting. Of course, we could look at the others that have come from Madrid, Jacobo, Jesus Rodriguez. You've still got Assane Diao, who came from Betis, who's going to develop into a super player. And a slightly different age bracket, Nicholas Kuhn, who's come across from Celtic. I'd probably back him to have a better second season than he has the first one.
He's got the quality. He's definitely
I think so. And look, I think when you bear in mind that the player who they thought would be the senior guy who would knit it all together, Alvaro Morata, hasn't really worked. Now, look, they would argue, like behind the scenes and in the dressing room, he's been a great difference maker. Yeah, fine. But you don't pay him to come and babysit the little ones. You know, you're expecting him to score goals, and he hasn't scored in Serie A all season. So I think there is the possibility of them getting better. How they take on European football, I think, would be difficult. The only point at which I would agree with Fabregas on what he was saying there, I don't think it was too early to come up, because maybe if you're really into the project, you have a different view of it. You know, if you're at the heart of a project, you have a different view of it, as you say. But look, like I said, the financial situation meant it was ripe for them to really grow into Serie A and have a proper go over the coming years. And that is what they're beginning to do. How they cope with European football, I do think it, like Champions League, would be too early for them. I think that would be too much, really. And that would be a huge test of him as well. When they go, if they were to go into the Europa League and they can kind of get away with putting out half and half teams in the league stage, I think that feels like a good fit. The other question really is how will they get on without Nico Paz next season? Because I don't think he'll be there. Remember, Real Madrid still have a buyback clause for him. And, you know, there'll be people out there going, oh, what a shame it would be if one of the best players in Serie A would end up on the Real Madrid bench. I don't think it'd be like that at all. I think they'll buy him back for, I think it's 10 million euros.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's a great deal they've done for themselves. They could buy back Jacobo as well if they wanted, by the way. So there's a lot of collateral of Real Madrid's in Como. What they'll do is they'll buy him back and they'll flip him somewhere else. I mean, if they could buy him back and then sell him on to Inter for like 6 times the price, 7 times the price, they're going to do that, aren't they? Or to a Premier League team. Remember, Tottenham were really interested.
Yeah, Tottenham were really interested. Just one more on this, because I find Serie A really fascinating, because what you've got that maybe isn't the case in Germany right now, and certainly with Spain, I don't think it's the case, because some of the kind of bigger hitters like Sevilla and Valencia have been really, really struggling. But you've got quite concentration of big names at the top of Serie A. So generally Milan will be there. Generally Roma will be there. The order will change. Lazio might be there. There's some quite big names at the top outside of the ones that would normally win the league. Is there room for Como? How soon do you think they could properly take a swing at the Scudetto, maybe?
There is room for Como. If we're talking about taking a swing at the Scudetto, I think that might take a little bit longer. But what they can do is do what Atalanta have done in recent years and establish themselves as one of the biggest teams, not necessarily one of the biggest clubs, but one of the biggest teams in Serie A, and that's definitely doable. Now, look, I know both you and I are often guided by child logic, Kevin. My kids have always insisted that Serie A is the best of the European leagues, simply because you don't know who's going to win it.
Yes.
So I think that's a lovely way to look at sport, and I wish I still had that view. But look, I think there's a lot to be said for that. But there's what's also to be said when you realise that is the fact that it is open.
Yeah.
You know, really, if you look at the finances of it, Napoli shouldn't have been able to win going back a couple of seasons. You know, I think never mind the 2025 title, they shouldn't have been able to win 2023. It was surprising that they won 2025. It was a real shock that they won in 2023. And, you know, clubs can have a go. You know, Milan have got themselves on an even keel without a bottomless budget as well. Look, we talk about it week after week after week, don't we, Kev? The fact that Inter have got the best squad in Serie A, and they have done for ages, but they don't win it every year, do they?
No, certainly not. And they certainly should have won more than they have. Coming up after the break, we're going to take a look at Liga.
Jason Cunningham was alongside Jeremy O'Hara on the Sports Bar after the game. He said he can see Arsenal shutting PSG down in the final.
Teta will not allow a basketball match. He won't. He won't.
Is it going to be a tactically defence then?
No, it won't be tactically defence, but I think that Arsenal, they're measured. Arsenal control games. They don't. Now, Arsenal are brilliant at doing that. They can be at times dull to watch because of that, but in a one-off game, who cares? I think Luis Enrique would probably want it being more open affair. I don't think Arteta will allow it.
Not the game we were expecting last night. You pointed out there, I said over 4.5 goals. I did think they're a bit well done to PSG and Luis Enrique for shutting out the game.
Yeah.
I mean, that proved there's another side to them, right?
Yeah, they can dig in when they need to. I mean, it helps they've got wonderful footballers, and I guess when you get a goal so early after 3 minutes with that attacking front line, it doesn't make the job easier, but when you've got the pace of Kvaratskhelia and Dembele, Doué can run, you've got Vitinha in the middle of the park, it does help the fact that you could just sit in there and defend, because the counter-attack, no one's catching you. You're being behind them. So, yeah, it's gonna be fascinating now to see what happens in the final. PSG was probably the team I didn't want. I'd prefer Bayern. But now it's PSG. You've got to go out there and put a performance in. It's going to be difficult. And I've said it before. I think Arsenal, to win this fixture, potentially may have to be perfect in terms of they may have to put in the best performance they've ever put in under Mikel Arteta in any competition.
Is that the only way you can see Arsenal winning, by playing the best they've ever played?
I think they're going to have to think defensively. They're going to have to be rock solid.
No, they are pretty much like that anyway.
Yeah, but there's still times you give it. Like if you give that sort of opportunity to Dembele, he ain't missing that.
No, you're right.
Trans-Europe Express on talkSPORT. We're going to look at Liga, and Andy, the headline for this is "All Hope Extinguished for Marseille." It's been another turbulent week for Marseille, and a former Premier League striker has been misbehaving, and I don't think Arsenal fans will necessarily be surprised by that player's identity.
Well, look, it didn't involve a car, so it was a little bit different. Yeah. So, look, Marseille, after their very poor results of late, were invited to spend the week sleeping at the training ground once again for the second time in a month. And Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, as one of the seniors in the group, decided on Thursday night that, in his words, he would add a bit of atmosphere to the group. And part of this involved leading some of the younger players through the corridors of La Commanderie, where Marseille train, looking for fun. And he grabbed a fire extinguisher and unloaded it on Bob Tari, who's a former French steeplechase winner, actually, who's now part of the management team at Marseille. Not only covered Tari in the fire extinguisher, but all his belongings and his room. He was not that amused.
I can imagine. It's like something like Grange Hill.
Well, just to point out, Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang is 37 next month. 37. And so,
always 18,
anyway,
Orba. Always 18.
Yeah, forever young, in the words of Mr. Hudson. Anyway, so Tari went and complained to Mehdi Benatia and to Abi Bey. Last thing that Abi Bey needed in particular. And Aubameyang was dropped for the game away to Le Havre tonight. Now, they did win tonight without Aubameyang, and it's a shame because on the whole he's been pretty good for them this season. He's done a great senior player job, but despite that win tonight, we know that mathematically with Lille's victory, that they can't make the top four. So their hopes of the Champions League are extinguished, which given that they were title challengers, or at least quasi-title challengers, going back to October, November, it's just an embarrassment of a season for them. They've spent so much money. They're in massive trouble with UEFA that is on the horizon with European FFP. So, yeah, the future, there are questions, let's put it that way. But the only question is that I can answer for you is that Abi Bey will not be there next season.
Let's move to an earth-shattering truth, Andy. Paris Saint-Germain on the cusp of Liga title glory.
Yeah, and Desiree Doué, he just turns up and does it in the big games, doesn't he? Now, look, they didn't play brilliantly against Brest tonight. Brest, who have sort of been drifting in mid-table. We know that Eric Weir, the former Sunderland guy and former Watford guy, is going to be leaving them in the summer after a long and successful period. They made it difficult for PSG, a rather tired PSG for a lot of the game. And then Desiree Doué comes on, scores a really daft solo goal, and they get it over the line, which means that even though Lens and PSG played their long-awaited potential title decider this week, look, even if Lens beat them 10-0, they're still going to win the league, basically, because they're 6 points clear with a much better goal difference. So at the end, you had the players and Luis Enrique, of course, delighted from their result in Munich in the week, celebrating and feeling relaxed enough to celebrate with the ultras in Paris.
Relaxed is an interesting word, actually, because do you think this is going to help them for this Champions League final against Arsenal? Because Arsenal's still got work to do to nail down that Premier League title.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see how this Lens PSG game on Wednesday will go, because I think really it will be more than anything else a symbolic thing for Lens supporters at the Bollard, who are amazing, by the way, some of the noisiest fans in European football. It's their opportunity to say thanks to their players, I think, because of course we know that they've qualified for the Champions League tonight. Lyon's loss and Lille's win has sealed the deal for them. We know they're going to finish top three. They will finish second, but they'll definitely finish top three, no matter what their results from here on in. And for PSG, I wonder what kind of team they put out, to be honest, because you'd forgive them for resting up. I think maybe a half and half team might be the flavour for midweek, and then maybe the same again when we get to next Sunday, when again all the games will be played simultaneously. This is why we've had a later than normal Ligue 1 section, because in the last two games of Ligue 1, all the matches kick off at the same time this year, Sunday night at 8 o'clock UK time.
And that race between Lille and Lyon has been really interesting. Bruno Genesio, the Lille boss, has said that he doesn't know what his future holds beyond the summer, but strikes me that he's done a pretty good job there.
Yeah, he has, because bear in mind, if you go back to February, they're all over the place. They don't look like they're going to qualify for Europe at all. And now they're on the brink of automatic qualification to the Champions League after their win at Monaco tonight. 1-0, Denis Zakaria own goal, but a brilliant result for them. And it means with Lyon losing against Toulouse, they've got an unexpected opportunity, really. All they've got to do is get a better result than Lyon on the final day, and then they're match Lyon, on the final day, and then they're up and away. So Lille's final game, interestingly enough, now this is why next Sunday night you've got to listen as well. They'll be playing at Auxerre next Sunday night. So that's going to be a huge one for Auxerre as well, who've had a big night tonight, as we'll discuss in a little moment.
Tell us actually, Andy, who is your star of the week? Because that's relevant to this, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's Lassine Sinoyoko who scored the winner for Auxerre against Nice tonight. Nice went a goal up in that. Auxerre came back to win. And Sinoyoko, what a player he is, by the way.
Yeah.
Goal scorer, goal maker, just a fantastic footballer who deserves really to play for a better team. Anyway, that win means Auxerre have gone above Nice. Nice drop into third bottom, which would be the relegation playoff spot. And if you're Sir Jim Ratcliffe, well, try selling them now. You know, I think the neglect really has come home to roost.
Yeah, and I think that was always going to be the case. My star of the week, 16-year-old Mezzion Mezloub. Incredible story, this. Came on for his debut for Lens and scored just a few seconds after coming on. That was the only goal of the game for Lens against Nantes, 1-0, and it relegated Nantes, and Mezloub's father was playing for Lens just a few years ago. Plenty to come on Trans Europe Express. The first 2 hours have absolutely flown by right here.
Let me apologise immediately if there's any smugness or glee from my co-host today. But you are used to Alex Crook by now. But Gabby Agbonlahor is also very happy. Put your cigar down. Great performance. Yeah. Well done. Congratulations.
Very much, thank you.
Do you reckon you could manage to be just a little bit humble because, you know, you haven't won anything?
Yeah, we haven't won anything yet, but, you know, Nottingham Forest fans, last Friday, the messages you were reading out, Sam, the callers, the direct messages on every possible social media platform I was getting, celebrating the fireworks. They had a concert after the game, only to get thumped on probably the most one-sided semi-final second leg you will ever see. Thumped. Couldn't get out of their own half. Light work for Aston Villa. Who's next?
I heard you having a go at the Arsenal fans this week, and Arsenal for having fireworks after they'd got through to the final in Budapest. I noticed, and I had pointed it out to you at least 3 times this week, that Villa have fireworks before every game, and they had fireworks before the semi-final last
fireworks, night. Mate. They're like sparklers that you have on your champagne when you're in a nightclub.
Might be on your champagne.
Yeah, they weren't fireworks. They're like little ones. What did the manager do after the game?
I don't know.
Emery?
It was definitely.
He clapped the fans for about 3 seconds and walked down the tunnel.
Okay, well, it was
Mikel
a champagne
Arteta
performance, wasn't it?
Was doing the Haymack Arena around the stadium. They're doing a tour of the stadium. You know,
he's quite used to getting to Europa League finals, so that's probably.
Oh, okay.
Is there not a small part of you that is worried that your legendary status is going to be diminished even further? Because surely you have to win something to be a legend at a football club.
I totally agree.
Knuckleball free kicks. They used to be all the rage, but when was the last time you saw someone score with one? We're going to take a look at why we're not really seeing them anymore and also explain a bit more about how they work. The knuckleball peaked in the 2010s, probably because that Ronaldo strike in 2008 inspired academy players everywhere. Here's a young Mason Mount.
I tried to base my free kick on Ronaldo, hit the ball by the valve and it moves. So what do you do? Top corner, top bin zone.
The name knuckleball comes from a baseball pitch held with the knuckles rather than the fingertips, which doesn't spin as it travels. Now, no ball is a perfect sphere, so as it travels, it creates ever-changing pockets of turbulent air, causing that unpredictable movement. Brazilian free-kick specialist Juninho Pernambucano wasn't the first player to do it, but he did perfect it, scoring 77 free-kicks over his career, more than anyone else. He was inspired by 90s midfielder Marcelinho Carioca and a guy called Didi, who was hitting knuckleballs in the 50s and 60s. Brazilians call it the dry leaf, because the ball looks like a leaf that gets blown around in the wind this way and that. So how do you do it? The key point is to hit the ball head on, usually with a straighter run-up. It's a punch-like shot and, crucially, as short a contact time as possible so the ball doesn't spin. Some people think players hit the valve to affect the air inside the ball. That's not the reason. It's because the part of the ball around the valve is more rigid, helping to shorten that contact time. Remember the David Luiz beauty against Colombia in the 2014 World Cup? We don't really see knuckleballs anymore. Why? Because players are being told not to shoot from dead ball situations because the XG is so low. In fact, as Opta shows here, since the 08-09 season, there's been a 10% reduction in players shooting from free kicks in the Premier League. In 23-24, a record low of 11 free kicks found the back of the net. And the knuckleball, by its very nature, is imprecise, which is why it's becoming a thing of the past.
You're listening to Danny Kelly's Trans-Europe Express. Kevin Hatchard sitting in for Danny tonight alongside European football expert Andy Brassell. Coming up in the next hour, we'll be taking a look at Germany's chances ahead of the World Cup finals. We'll look back on the Europa League and Conference League semi-finals, and we'll be zooming around the leagues. It's all coming up on Trans-Europe Express. But it's about time that we caught up with Tim Vickery to get the latest on all matters South American. Tim, great to have you with us. You're in the very odd position of being pleased that Arsenal have done you a favour.
Yeah, semi-pleased. And I was hoping that the gods of football could find a way for both teams to lose, but unfortunately that wasn't possible.
Alas, but a big night for Spurs coming up against Leeds. But we're focusing, of course, on South America. We've been on Neymar watch of late, so that's where we're going to start, I think, because you want to talk not only about Neymar, who, of course, his chances of making the World Cup very much in the balance, but the Colombian great James Rodriguez as well, a tale of two number 10s.
Indeed, yeah. It's a tale of veterans all over the place, in fact, because we still don't have confirmation that Messi is going to play the World Cup. I think he is, but he still hasn't said definitely. Luis Suarez is throwing his hat back in the ring, saying if Uruguay want me, I will rescind my retirement. So veterans everywhere you look. Well, with James Rodriguez, the Colombia side has been built around him, and it really is built around him and the link that he has with Luis Diaz. And also James from set pieces. They've got a lot of big lads who can attack his set pieces. But he's just got so little football behind him. And in a club career of ever-decreasing circles and ever-decreasing number of appearances, the 12th country in his career and his global tour, Minnesota United, he's hardly getting a game. He's hardly playing. It's already announced that his contract is not going to be renewed at the end of June. You wonder if he may even retire after the World Cup, but he is absolutely key to Colombia's plans to the World Cup. Whether this is going to be a kind of Gareth Bale in Qatar type situation where he really can't do it when they get there, we'll have to see. And the coach there, Néstor Lorenzo, he must have a plan B. And there are other playmakers there. Quintero, who played the World Cup of 14 and 18, very clever player. Carrascal, who plays at Flamengo. But it really is a team that has been built around James Rodriguez. And is he going to be fit enough to do himself justice in a World Cup, which is it's frightening, a little over a month away. In terms of Neymar, well, we will find out Monday week. He had a busy week. We talked this time last week about his training ground bust up with the son of Robinho, rather unimaginatively entitled Robinho Jr. That looked like it was going to be very, very serious for a while, because Robinho Jr.'s agents came in with on the basis of this, on the basis of not providing minimum guarantees of workplace security, for his contract to be ripped up and Robinho to become a free agent. They've since walked back from that. The dressing room was kind of on Neymar's side here. The codes of football are a little bit archaic in terms of slapping down the youth, which was what happened here. But that was all smoothed over anyway. It could still count against him when Ancelotti comes to name his 26. But what I think is going to count against him more is he's just not doing it. That they played midweek. They played a team from Paraguay, Recoleta, practically an amateur side. It was a home game for the Paraguayans, but it was switched to the Brazilian border, so there were pretty much only Santos fans in the stadium. Neymar scored quite a nice goal, but he didn't do very much. It's a very disappointing 1-1 draw. He really is running out of games. He's in action at the moment. The game against Bragantino in the Brazilian Championship is about half an hour old. He's got 2 more games, both against the same team, one in the Cup and one in the League, before Ancelotti makes his choice. But all these matches, they're all very much against Nat Mills and Bobby. You know, even if he does really shine, it's hard to look at these kind of opponents and say, well, yeah, this proves that he can do some things at a level that he hasn't been able to do since he was injured in October of 2023, which is a long, long time ago. So there's pressure building. Even some politicians are petitioning the Brazilian FA to select him. I very much suspect, and it is only a suspicion, that Ancelotti would rather do without all of this circus. But he's a very, very political figure. You know, he's worked with Berlusconi and Florentino Perez, and he's managed to negotiate all that. And I'm fascinated to see which way this one comes out, because all it's going to do over the next few days is build up and up and up. And all of these remaining 3 games he's got, they are going to be referendums. And if he does anything, then there will be a huge constituency. There are already, despite the fact that he's been an absolute shadow, there is already a constituency saying it's unthinkable to leave him out, as well as a considerable body of people saying, well, look at him, it's unthinkable to put him in. And this is where Ancelotti, I think, is earning his salary, having to steer a path between these 2 very dissenting schools of opinion.
So, Tim, going from people who have a intermittent involvement in club football right back into club football, you know, I really miss at points like this in the season Mark Langdon on here to explain the Belgian playoffs to us. You know, there's always a huge part of the Trans-Europe Express experience. So from one Spurs man to another, maybe you could explain the format of what's happening in the Argentinian league to us, because it's very confusing to me, and it's actually getting quite serious.
Yeah, it is. Well, the first point to make is that there are 30 teams in the league. Why? And yeah, I know, but there is nonsense going on here, but it is quite understandable nonsense, because Argentina is a big place, but it is, and historically in its football, very, very centralised around the capital city of Buenos Aires. And until the kind of late 60s, it was only Buenos Aires province. They began to let some other cities in, Rosario and so on. So the tradition of the Argentine game is of neighbourhood clubs. And everywhere you go, there's a club. And some of these clubs are big. They're huge. They've got a wonderful tradition. Over the last few years, the Argentine FA have really worked very hard to try and decentralise football. And this is having some success. A very successful team until yesterday. We'll get there. Independiente Rivadavia from Mendoza up in the north, the wine growing area. This is their first year in international competition. And you're beginning to get more and more of those stories. How can you keep these neighbourhood clubs alive while also opening the door to the forces in the provinces. I know. We'll have 30. We'll have all of them in the first division. So there is some logic behind the madness. So then you're left with, well, how do we organise a championship for 30 teams? And they have 2 separate championships a year, and the 30 teams are arranged in 2 groups, and they all play each other plus 1 game against their bitter rival from the other group. So 16 rounds, and then the top teams from each group then go into playoffs. So then it from kind of coasting along, suddenly it gets really, really serious because these playoffs are 1 game. One game. Yes.
One and done.
So, indeed. Yeah, 1 and done. And so we've got 8 games this weekend. And the teams that ended up higher in the league, they get home advantage in this 1 game. So you would have thought they're locked on. They are locked on. Firstly, the league table says they're better, okay? Secondly, they're at home. And that's a huge advantage because in almost all of Argentine football, there are no away fans. So, the poor old visiting team are going straight in to the Colosseum, the baying bear pit, with not a friend in sight. And you look at the results, and of the 8 games that we're having over this weekend, the first 3 of them went to the away side, including Boca Juniors, who really looked like they've just run into trouble over the last 2 weeks, but they look like the form horse, losing 3-2 at home to Huracan's side, who ended the game with 9 men, and Independiente Rivadavia, who have been the sensation of the season, the best team. Just 1 bad afternoon, and good night, Vienna. Good night, Irene. It's all over. See Naples and die. Or in their case, see Union Santa Fe and die.
Yes.
They lost at home, so they're out. It's all out for them. River Plate are just kicking off now against San Lorenzo. And then next weekend, we do it all again. Again, the team that has done better in the league phase has home advantage, and the away team should have no chance. But I remember this time last year, there was a team called Platense. Traditional team, never won anything. One of the very few teams who wear brown. And they were one of the worst teams in the league phase. And they kept on beating fancied opponents away from home. And they got all the way to the final. So their fans hadn't been able to see all of these games. And the final is at the other end of the country on a neutral ground. And so the fans had to schlep all the way up to the north of the country to watch Platense be champions. No one saw it coming. And we could get something else like that again. In terms of the money, and especially after the Club World Cup, where they almost kind of stunk the place out a little bit, but they earn a lot of money. River Plate and Boca Juniors should be miles and miles and miles ahead. But football, the great humbler,
yes,
that's not the way it's proving in Argentina. In this, and I suppose something that does even it out is just doing it over 1 game, because 1 unhappy afternoon and it's all over.
Oh, I'd like that in the Bundesliga. Get it done in 1 game. That might knock off Bayern. That might be the only way, quite frankly. And the key is wear brown, because it clearly distracts everybody. Yes. Chaos in Colombia, Tim, in the Copa Libertadores, and the only kind of game that I would probably have the fitness for, because it was a game that only lasted 5 minutes.
Yeah, and Colombian football is an enigma. Last month, Colombia won the South American Under-17s. They beat Brazil 3-0 in the semi and Argentina 4-0 in the final. Under-20 World Cup last year, Colombia came 3rd. So, and it has the biggest population in South America, with the exception of Brazil. Colombian club football should be really strong. It is terrible. And a lot of the reason for that is that clubs are run as businesses. And the only really thing that makes money in football is selling players. So that's all they want to do. So these young players from last year's under-20 side, if they're any good, they've already been sold already. We've got a few of them in Brazil, and some have gone to Mexico. And you look at the teams, and Hugo Rodallega is the centre forward of Santa Fe, one of the Colombian champions last year.
By now.
He is, yes. Teo Gutierrez, who's now 41, Andy will remember from Portugal. Teo Gutierrez, he is leading the line for Junior Barranquilla at the age of 41. And you look at the age of the players, and it's not even dad's, it's granddad's army these days. And for one set of fans, it all became a little bit too much. Medellin, Colombia plays 2 separate championships a year and a cup. And Medellin came close to winning everything and won nothing. So there's a kind of accumulated frustration. This year, they've been in the Libertadores, they've been doing badly. They haven't made the playoffs. The Colombian system also top 8 go through to playoffs. They missed out on it with a defeat at home last week. So that really put the cat amongst the proverbials. And the leading shareholder of the club was on the field after this home defeat that eliminated them from the Colombian Championship before the playoffs, making obscene gestures to the supporters. The supporters went absolutely berserk. And on Thursday, they're at home to Flamengo. It's a big payday for the club. The authorities are saying, look, you're going to have to play this behind closed doors. The atmosphere here is not conducive to law and order. Play it behind closed doors. The club, thinking of a payday, thinking, oh no, we're going to open them doors. And the supporters, they manage to, they walk in civvy clothes. Then the kind of ultras behind the goal. And then they all change into all black with balaclavas. And their aim is for this game not to happen. So that they are going berserk even before. There's all kinds of flares going off. You're looking at the scene, you're thinking, I don't think this can kick off. The referee decided to give it a go. But after 3 minutes, he saw the error of his ways because they'd already gone through the barriers. You know, there's
most optimistic referee in the world.
Indeed, yes, yeah. Maybe he doesn't get paid if it's
Yeah, maybe,
I don't think so. It's a valiant effort. And after 3 minutes, he takes them off, and there's no way they're getting back on again because the fans aren't going to drift away. Their objective there is to ensure that they will do what it takes for this game not to happen, and that's their form of protest. So that was a game where Medellin hardly made a single error, but even so, they have heaped shame on Colombian club football, which should be so much better than it is.
Talking of scary men, good week for Nicolas Otamendi.
Yes, it is. Yes, he has won a reprieve. He was sent off in the last World Cup qualifier. Argentina against Ecuador. He was sent off, as was Moses Caicedo of Ecuador. Now, in previous tournaments, I think they would both have missed. They were slated to miss the opening game of the World Cup. Now, Argentina weren't entirely sure how they were going to replace Otamendi for their opener. For Ecuador, how you can't replace Moses Caicedo. And the first game is Ivory Coast. And if you remember the last World Cup, the vital game was the third game against the African opponent, Senegal. It's almost like the same group this time, but the order of the games is different. And it looks like the Ivory Coast could be, or Cote d'Ivoire. I'm never sure what you're supposed to do with that one. So the fact that FIFA have given these a reprieve is a fantastic piece of news for Ecuador. Some would say it's a less fantastic piece of news for Argentina because Otamendi at first choice might be taking a chance. But I imagine, Mr. Brassell, sir, that quite a lot of this has to do with handing out reprieves to Cristiano Ronaldo.
Yeah, it's all down to Uncle Cristiano. I think that's clear. I mean, obviously the World Cup really needs Messi and Ronaldo from a commercial and PR perspective. Who knew it needed Nicolas Otamendi as well?
Well, exactly. Might as well throw them all in there. We can just have one big party. Tim, always in education. Thanks very much.
My pleasure. Thank you. Speak next week.
Coming up after the break on Trans Europe Express, we'll take a look at Germany's World Cup.
Content creator and Palace fan Ollie Thomas is with us this morning. A very good morning to you, Ollie. How are you?
Morning, Ollie.
Morning. I'm good. I'm a bit tired, as you can imagine, but I'm good. And thanks, Dean. You're right. We are the best fans in the world.
Debatable. It's debatable, Lily. I'm joking. I have a soft spot for Palace. My sister plays for Palace. They just got promoted, and yeah, I mean, fair play to them. Your manager, I mean, the fact that he is leaving and he might win a third trophy before he goes is crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. It's obviously sad that he's going, but I think it could have turned a bit sour and did turn a bit sour at the start of the calendar year. And fair play to Steve Parish, who held his own and didn't sack him. And it's now kind of become a nice send-off. And I think everyone wants to win it for Glasner as well, rather than it being like a bitter goodbye, I suppose. I think we've channeled that departure really well. And yeah, I'm feeling confident. It's weird watching a Palace team that just repeatedly turns up in big games. Like, I'm just not used to it. Every single big game we've basically ever had under Glasner, we've turned up, played really well. So hopefully we can do it one more time.
Why do you think he's leaving the club? I'm trying to work it out myself. Because he must realise that
wasn't
Palace
guaranteed. I mean, they got rid of the best players and they didn't replace them. And he'd won trophies, and they still hadn't got that right. Would that be it, Ollie? Would you think he was frustrated with how the club has been run?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, he basically did exactly the same thing when he was at Wolfsburg and Frankfurt. Like, the timelines are very similar in terms of he comes to a club, starts really well, does really well, and then falls out with the board. And he's been obviously very open about the fact that he didn't think we should have sold Eze, didn't think we should have sold Gahey, or at least when we sold them.
Jordan returns tomorrow from 10 a.m. as Jim White and Simon Jordan are joined by the former Arsenal defender Martin Keown as they look back on Arsenal's vital and somewhat controversial 1-0 win over West Ham. That's White and Jordan tomorrow morning from 10 a.m. Do not miss it. So we're going to focus now on Germany and their World Cup chances. Of course, the World Cup finals in North America just a few weeks away. We'll have you covered across the talkSPORT network. And Andy, I find Germany really interesting. We both cover German football particularly closely. And I guess where we should start is the coach, Julian Nagelsmann, because it was a surprise when he took the job in the first place, being, the in-demand club coach that he is, a guy that has coached Leipzig, has coached Bayern, that got the Hoffenheim job at 28. But he had a respectable campaign at the Euros on home soil, I thought. They went out to Spain, who went on to win the tournament, and they went out in controversial fashion with that Cucurella handball that they're still talking about in Germany and specifically in German media. But this World Cup's really interesting because you get the sense there's still a little bit of doubt in general in the German football public about what he can do with this team and about whether they're going to be real competitors at this World Cup.
Yeah, and I think that doubt really is two-pronged, Kev, because on one hand, I think there's a doubt about the actual team on the pitch. Progress has not been linear since Euro 2024. And as you say, I thought they did what they needed to, I think, from a moral and emotional perspective in that tournament, because what Germany needed and what Germany's football public needed to get close to its national team again is to feel like it was backing some good guys who they could make some sort of connection with. And, they played well. They created atmosphere. They came the closest to knocking Spain out, you have to say, as well. I thought they were excellent in that quarterfinal, and who knows, if they'd have got past Germany if they'd have got past Spain in extra time, this conversation would be totally different because they could have gone on to win the tournament, I think. But since then, not only has progress not been linear, and there have been some truly awful performances, by the way, along the way. I think people are, the second part of it is I think people are a little bit unsure of Nagelsmann as a guy. Someone who is still only, 38 years old.
Yeah.
And someone who, I guess, like it feels like he wants to be the centre of things. And I feel not only do members of the public and media think that, I think some of his bosses think that, and I think some of his players think that as well.
So Uli Hoeneß, who was ostensibly his boss at Bayern Munich, what he says goes, although he didn't actually want Nagelsmann sacked at Bayern. But he has spoken recently and said that he feels, Nagelsmann believes that it's coaches who win games. And Hoeneß was quick to say, I think it's players and teams that win games, not coaches. And the allegation is you think a lot of yourself and you're putting yourself front and centre when it should be you putting the players front and centre. Now, the interesting thing in German media has been that the DFB, the German FA, are going to reach out to Hoeneß and try and have some kind of rapprochement between Hoeneß and Nagelsmann and kind of smooth all this out before the World Cup. Now, whether that happens or not, the fact that that's even an issue suggests that they are a little bit sensitive to potential criticism of Nagelsmann at this stage.
Yeah, and I guess like part of it's his generation, really, isn't it? The fact that he is under 40, he's someone who I guess for some people has had a target on his back from the moment where he said, I would wear makeup on the touchline because everything's in HD these days.
Yeah, he had his eyebrows done, did he not? I seem to remember.
And I guess like proper football men will sneer at this, whereas, I think football's a TV production. It's just, I guess he didn't help himself by saying it out loud. And those sort of impressions are something that happen a lot with him, I think. And what Hoeneß was saying is just another branch of that, really, isn't it? It's not how he is as a coach, it's how he presents himself. And it's particularly surprising, Kev, when, of course, he had that famous quote when he was in charge of Hoffenheim, where he said, being a head coach is basically 15% tactics and 85% social competence. And yet, ever since then, he's stumbled into these sort of traps again and again and again. Now, look, I think this all ties into how they do on the pitch as well. Because, look, people will tolerate like a lot of stuff if the team's doing well. And if Germany go deep into this tournament, and I think semi-finals or further, they can't fire him, I don't think, unless the football's like monumentally terrible. And remember, he's got a contract that extends past the World Cup towards the next Euros.
Yeah.
But I think if it doesn't come off on the pitch, then it's a little bit different. Because remember as well, the contract may be the contract, but look, if he got sacked, it wouldn't be the end of the world for him. I think it would be more a mutual agreement. That, as you've pointed out to me, there are loads of club jobs out there and he'll be very much in demand. And I think the interesting thing as well, which has really been a thing over the last couple of months, is the fact that there's a Jurgen Klopp type shadow looming over him. Well, maybe it's actual Jurgen Klopp looming over him. He is 6'4.5" after all.
Yes.
And
he's on every TV advert in Germany anyway, so he's everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. So I think the thing is, it's clear that the head of sport role at Red Bull is not what he imagined, and the politics of it are not really for him. But I don't think he wants to go back to a club job. So it's been suggested that some people at the German FA or some intermediaries of some people at the German FA have already sounded out Klopp about this. I tend to think when all the big jobs come up and people ask, will he go back to Liverpool? Will he go to Real Madrid? I think the answer to that is an obvious no. But I think if the Germany job comes up, it's a different question. And the longer he's there in the background, I think, you know, Kev, as well as anyone, and maybe you can explain a little bit further to people, the sort of status that Klopp has in Germany, because, you know, he was a big star actually in the media even before he became Dortmund manager.
Yeah, I think that's the key to it, actually. He is so charismatic and he's been a presence in German football for such a long time. I mean, you think of even, you know, when he was the player coach at Mainz, you know, and he was still doing kind of pundit jobs for major TV channels. And he's going to work for Magenta this summer. He's going to be part of their broadcast team. And anyone who spends any time in Germany we'll see Klopp on the telly at some stage, whether it's on a show, in an interview, or on an advert. He advertises everything. They absolutely love him. I think the Germany job's perfect for him. I think the really interesting thing is whether Nagelsmann goes because it was a bad World Cup or Nagelsmann goes because it was a good World Cup. But either way, my suspicion is he won't be the coach for the Euros, and it may well be Jurgen Klopp, because I think if he does well, I think there'll be a queue of clubs who are interested in him. I think if he does badly, I think you're right, the DFB will look at it and think there's some kind of mutual termination. I think there's some big decisions that he has to make as well in terms of personnel.
Speaking of which, Kev, I know we've got to move on from this, but I've just got one brief question for you. Does Nick Woltemade start?
I don't think he does. I think if Kai Havertz is fit, and that's a big if, but I think if Havertz is fit, he starts in the centre-forward role, because I think Nagelsmann trusts him. I think his mobility, his ability to hold the ball up, his ability to keep possession, I think he's critical. He likes Woltemade very much, I think. But you look at the form he's had, you look at the fact that he's been played out of position by Eddie Howe at Newcastle. I think there's been a drop in confidence there. And actually, we shouldn't be mega surprised, because if you look at Woltemade's career, he didn't pull up any trees at Werder Bremen. It had to happen for him at Elversberg at a lower level. And then under really good coaching from Sebastian Hoeneß, he took that leap at Stuttgart. But I think I cannot see him starting for Germany in his current shape. But absolutely, I think he'll be a part of that squad. But it's going to be fascinating to find out what happens with Germany in a few weeks' time. They've got an interesting group with Curacao, with Ecuador, and with Ivory Coast. And we're going to bring you all that action across the talkSPORT network. Coming up, we're going to look back on the semi-finals of both the Europa League and the Conference League right here on Trans-Europe.
To join Arsenal was the biggest achievement in my career, but the way the things end up was a little bit not nasty. But at the end of the day, I'm happy. They are happy. They know, you know what, life goes on. If you ask me if I regret, I don't regret. But I'm happy also giving them something back, because at the end of the day, if I can't represent and defend my parents, I don't know who would do it for me. So it's kind of doing my job.
You're spot on, Emmanuel. I don't blame you at all. I would have done the same, mate.
Thank you.
Looking at the title race, Manchester City messing up against Everton. How do you think it's going to go? Who do you think will win it in the end?
Who do I think will win it? If you ask me today, I will still tell you that I think Man City will win it, but I would like Arsenal to win it, because it has been over a decade. They have been fighting for that even when I was there. We were fighting for it. Obviously, in April, then sometime in March and April, it's all over. And we drop point at Wigan, at Bolton, wherever you can call it. Then we saw the league sliding out of our hand. But this year, they're doing quite well. And the good thing is that defensively, they are very good. But now they have to win the last 3 games to win the league. And obviously, Man City, again, dropping points at Everton. They will come back stronger. They will manage with their manager, with the players, with the experienced team they had. They will do everything possible to win the last 3 games and wait for Arsenal to drop points so they can be champion. But trust me, it's not going to be an easy task for both of them. Let's see who win. But I wish, for the first time, I wish Arsenal wins it, because they have been working towards this for so long time.
There is English representation in all three major European finals this season, and talkSPORT will have live coverage and commentary of all three of those matches. We've already told you that we'll have a commentary team on Arsenal against PSG in the Champions League final, and that's the case for both the Europa League final and the Conference League final. Aston Villa against Freiburg is the Europa League final. Jim Proudfoot and the former Aston Villa captain Andy Townsend be your commentary team for that one. And the Conference League final, Crystal Palace against Rayo Vallecano. That will be commentary from Sam Matterface and the former Crystal Palace boss, Alan Pardew. So we'll have every kick covered right here on talkSPORT. Andy, let's look back at the Europa League first. Aston Villa beat Nottingham Forest 4-0 in that second leg, turned around a 1-0 first leg deficit to win 4-1. We did say last week that we felt that Unai Emery could be the difference, and he had that team set up perfectly. And I think, funnily enough, that defeat to Tottenham, which is such an awful performance in the Premier League preceding that semi-final second leg, that was probably the springboard and the kick they needed.
Yeah, I think you could argue that, Kev. And it's funny, we compared it to when Sevilla won the Europa League going back to 2016 under Emery against Liverpool in the final. And in the last part of that La Liga season, their form totally dropped off. I mean, they didn't win an away game that season. It was remarkable, really. But of course, I think you can say with what Villa have done over recent years, the scrutiny on them is far higher. Like, people mentioned what was happening to Sevilla, but a performance like that, especially in a match where it was really important to other teams, it wasn't really going to go unnoticed. I did think the absence of Morgan Gibbs-White was absolutely huge in this.
Agree.
One of the better players in the Premier League, and a real shame for the neutral spectacle that he wasn't involved in the end, or he wasn't able to be involved. I think Vitor Pereira deserves some praise, really, for being able to guide them to safety in the Premier League and still make them competitive in this. Obviously, this was a bridge too far. But look, Villa have looked like the favourites since the beginning of this competition. And they'll have a really interesting opponent in this final, because Freiburg, who you know very well, a club that have never won a major trophy. They've come really close before, but never quite managed it. What an opportunity. And for them as well, they've kind of got to keep their eye on the ball, because if they don't win in this final, they can still clinch European football through the Bundesliga, can't they? But it was funny that the sheer joy of them getting over the line against Braga in this semi. They were 2-1 down from the first leg. Then they got a massive sort of helping hand when Mario Douglas got sent off in the 6th minute.
Yeah.
Took control of the game from there. And then as it got closer, they had a little bit of a panic. Braga pulled one back. They could have pushed it into extra time, despite playing so much of the 90 minutes with 10 men. But an amazing moment for them and their coach as well, Julian Schuster. You saw him celebrating with the ultras in the home end at the end.
Yeah, and what was lovely, actually, was that Christian Streich, who is basically the godfather of this football club. I mean, he is a guy that was a youth coach. He didn't really want to take the senior job many moons ago, but he was persuaded to do it. And even when they were relegated from the Bundesliga a few years ago, he stuck with them. They kept faith with him, and he took them straight back up. And this is a guy that's taken Freiburg from being a club that would always have the priority of getting enough points on the board to stay in the Bundesliga. He transformed them from that to a team that was suddenly competing for trophies. They got to the final of the DFB Pokal. They lost it on penalties to Leipzig.
Could you say it's Atalanta-esque?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say, because I think the crux of it, a lot of it is youth development. A lot of it is what they do with their academy, whether that's players that come into their team or players that they sell. You look at Kevin Schade, for example. He didn't play that many games for Freiburg in the grand scheme of things, but they were able to sell him to Brentford for decent money. And he set the template. When he went, you're talking kind of an Arsene Wenger Fergie vibe. I mean, this is a guy that had been there such a long time. You thought, how on earth are they going to replace him? Because he was such a big personality as well. He was very much the standard setter. You wouldn't mess with him. And it was his former assistant, and before that, his former captain, Julian Schuster, as you say, who took over, and he's done an absolutely phenomenal job. It's been seamless. You would never know that Strike wasn't the coach anymore. Schuster's just as intense, just as thin. This is my theory. All the really intense, mad coaches, there's not a scrap of fat on them. Guys like Tuchel, Glasner, you know, there is not a scrap of fat on any of those guys because they're just wired the whole time, just thinking about the next win. So congratulations to Schuster. Congratulations to Freiburg. It's a great story. Just in the Conference League, Andy, Palace saw it through against Shakhtar. We know what a good team Shakhtar are, and we're going to talk about them in the next section, actually. So well done to Palace for that. But I want to talk about Rayo Vallecano. I know that we talked about it last week in terms of what they've had to overcome just to get to this stage, let alone the final. But the way that they locked out Strasbourg, who have got so much more money and resource than them, it's just a phenomenal achievement.
They're so well coached by Inigo Lopez. And really, if you look at how tight the relegation battle is in La Liga, as we were talking about earlier, and if you look at their resources, if you look at a president in Raul Martin Presa who's constantly sabotaging his own club and has been for a number of years. Yeah, you get in there, Statler, I'll be walled off. And I just think it's just remarkable. Bear in mind, like, they have not been able to play a couple of their home games because the pitch wasn't of La Liga standard. You know, they had to play one of their games out of Leganes. It's ridiculous, really. And that game, by the way, the players stepped up and beat Atletico Madrid 3-0 to get them out of the relegation zone. I think they will escape relegation with some comfort. I think the way they managed those two games, look, they won 1-0 in both legs against the Strasbourg team who have like infinite resources compared to them. And like really, it totally flattered Strasbourg. The result. I mean, we won't go into Emmanuel Omega of Chelsea next season trying to calm down the ultras while
that went well.
Dressed in his Jesus piece and like a massive pair of sunglasses. You know, maybe read the room a little bit. But yeah, I mean, it's a disappointment for Gary O'Neill, but amazing for Rayo. And I think when you look at the atmosphere at Vallecas and the atmosphere at Selhurst Park. I mean, I was there on Thursday night. It was just jaw-dropping. It was, you know, you can make an argument for Palace being the best atmosphere in the Premier League, despite it being a ground that needs a bit of love, a little bit like a superior version of Vallecas, actually.
Yeah.
So I think the two clubs, despite them being like a financial gulf between them, actually have quite a lot in common. You know, the love of their supporters has kept both clubs alive in really dark moments.
And a sliding doors moment for the coach Inigo Perez, who was going to go with Andoni Iraola to Bournemouth, only to be told he wouldn't get a work permit because he couldn't make substantive enough contribution to British football. I think they might have got that one wrong. Coming up on Trans Europe Express, we're going to zoom around.
Let's not worry about other teams. I'm sorry, West Ham, not our problem. Okay, you lost 3-0 to Brentford. You've got 3 games. Go and beat Arsenal on the weekend. Do it yourself. Aston Villa, worry about Aston Villa. And the players, they took it easy. My daughter was there in the Holton. She's like, Dad, why is everyone walking? It was walking football from Aston Villa. But then when you see a performance like that, where they've put in 100% every player, you don't care about that. Up the Villa!
Up the Villa!
Up the Villa! Istanbul!
Do you want the hands mask? Put the hands mask on.
Gabby's putting the hands mask on.
Up the Villa! Up the Villa! Up the European Villa! Istanbul! Istanbul! Let's go! Let's go, baby! Boys, I'm
Do as anyone see. Do as anyone see.
Yeah, got it.
Go on, let's set it up for Gabby.
Sorry. Has anyone seen Maximus Scott? Where are you, Max? We need some news. Robin Hood, the Prince of Thieves, Sherwood Forest, Friar Tuck. Where are you, Friar? The original boots chemist. Hooters. Is Hooters closed? I used to open Hooters. Close Hooters. Shut it down. Matt Ford, do us a favour, mate. Stuart Broad, where are you? Chris Wokes, better player. Where are you? Tricky Trees. Rock City. HB Sauce, where are you? Notts. Forest.
And Big H Marcus killed me. The Big H Marcus killed me.
You're listening to Trans Europe Express with Kevin Hatchard and Andy Brassell, speeding towards the end of an action-packed show. We're going to zoom around the leagues for you. Andy, we're going to get to a big success in Turkey in a moment, but we did a big section last week on this extraordinary story in the Netherlands that could have seen 133 games in the Eredivisie replayed, but we can all settle down because there's not going to be that much drama in the end.
Yeah, it was all down to a court in Utrecht last Monday, Kev, and they sided with the Dutch FA, the court. I think a lot of people were expecting essentially football Armageddon if NAC Breda were to win their case, which even if there were legal grounds for it, which obviously they're still taking advice on it, they incurred the ire of all sort of football fans in the Netherlands. It was just a shameless attempt to get out of their sporting failures. Of course, it was about an ineligible player, Dean James, who had declared for Indonesia, and they pointed out thus would have lost his Netherlands citizenship. Didn't have a work permit, of course, and this would have opened up a whole can of worms for like potential dual nationals who've gone off and played for Suriname, people like Tyrone Cherry, for example. It was just really, really outrageous claim. Clearly, there's a complication that needs to be sorted out, administrative wise. But look, NAC Breda are the villains of all this. They were ruled against, and so they had to beat here in vain and try and keep going because of the results elsewhere for Volendam and for Telstar. They were relegated this weekend. Their fans, the NAC Breda fans, tried to get the game called off, as our good mate Alex Sonneveld has been telling us, by throwing stuff on the pitch. It means they've still got to play the last 8 minutes of this game knowing they're going to be relegated anyway, which is not great for the players. They won't be able to play it in Breda because of security concerns, so they're going to have to delocalise it. But the end to a really, really sorry episode. I guess Ajax there are sitting at home and Oscar Garcia are thinking, oh, thank goodness they're not mentioning how rubbish we are anyway.
For shame.
Fifth place.
What, for Ajax?
Yeah.
Horrendous. Yes, for shame, NAC Breda. For shame. Disgraceful effort all round. Turkey, though, Galatasaray, the champions. No surprise there, Andy, but still got to be done. There's still some good teams there. And even though they're expected to win the league, still had to push.
Yeah, they did. And it could have been a nightmare, and it turned into a big party in the end. They're at home to Antalyaspor, who have been fighting to stay up. Antalyaspor took the lead right at the end of the first half. Then after a Mario Lemina equaliser, they went 2-1 up. But Galatasaray turned it around, 1-4-2, to make sure they clinched with a game to spare, their 25th league championship, and another year without for Fenerbahce, who did their bit and went and won 3-0 at Konyaspor. There was a really interesting moment when it was 2-2 in the second half, and Barış Yilmaz, who'd been taken off, he was getting the coaching staff to check their phone to check what the Fenerbahce score was. So it was getting that tense. But the clinching goal by Kaan Ayhan was a moment, because Mauro Icardi came on as sub when they were chasing the goals. Of course, Victor Osimhen is the main man there now, of course. And it was a brilliant assist from Icardi, who you thought was going to hold the ball in the corner, but he beat a couple of players, set it on a plate for Kaan Ayhan. And yeah, it was a brilliant moment. He was really overwhelmed with emotion at the end. And I guess people don't really think of him as an emotional guy, but yeah, after they played the club anthem and, of course, the Champions League theme tune, they played Özkan Alyum, which is a popular Turkish song, which has become like Mauro Icardi's anthem over the last couple of years. The song's a declaration of love. So the Galatasaray fans sung it to him. Of course, they had that banner out a while back, which said, was a quote of Icardi's saying, Galatasaray is not a part of my career, it's a part of my life. He's been there for 4 years. It doesn't look like they're going to extend his contract now, partly due to fitness reasons. You wonder if he's got a swan song in the Middle East or something like that. But culturally, not just playing wise, because you look at the numbers and they're extraordinary, really. 77 goals and 25 assists in 133 games. But the way he's taken the club to his heart, the way he's moved the needle, the way he's made the Super League, not just for Galatasaray, a destination for world-class players who are still at their peak, is absolutely huge.
We managed to do a whole section on Mauro Icardi, and we didn't mention Wonder once. Let's move to Czechia then. And Slavia against Sparta, the Prague derby, is always really heartfelt, really passionate. This went a little bit over the top, Andy, it's fair to say.
Yeah, because Slavia, now this is the weird thing. You've got to listen to this carefully, because the side that starts the trouble is the surprising bit here. So Slavia are just second. They're 3-2 up. They're just seconds away from winning the league. Obviously, the pyro goes off. Slavia fans start chucking stuff on the pitch. It all gets a bit out of hand. Sparta players are attacked, and the game is abandoned. So they're 10 seconds away, probably 10, 20 seconds away from winning the league, and the game is abandoned. So who knows what happens next? But clearly, the president has come out and said about Thomas Chori and David Duera, 2 players who were involved in the disturbances themselves. Look, these guys are never going to play for the club again. And Sparta have said thanks for the apology, but obviously this is a disgrace for Czech football. And it is such a massive shame. You feel awful when these moments are stolen from players and stolen from teams and stolen from clubs as well. But that it's been stolen by their own fans is just bizarre.
Yeah, it's a very, very, what could be a very odd end to the title race there. And yeah, you're absolutely right. Scenes that you don't want to see. We want passion. We want, obviously, the great sights and sounds in these games and in these derbies, but not like this. Just a very quick word on Ukraine, because Arda Turan has won the league with Shakhtar.
He has. They beat Ворskла Poltava 4-0 today. And that's no small thing, because bear in mind, after they played at Palace on Thursday night, 15-hour trip back, having taken a 15-hour trip there. They played 20 European games this season. Going into the first leg against Palace, they had to play 3 games in 7 days, a couple of days before that to deal with that. And obviously all of this involves travelling, no home games, all the rest of it. It's a Herculean effort. And like you said before, I thought they played pretty well in both legs against Palace. I thought their lack of experience did them in the end. I put this to Arda Turan after the game, and he said, I've nothing to reproach my players for. If there's any lack of experience, it's their coach. You know, pointing out that he's only in his second job, having done a brilliant work at Eyüpspor in Turkey, and then getting them promoted to the top league and then almost getting them into Europe. And now in these extraordinary conditions, coaching a team that play with real ambition. Of course, they're well back compared to a lot of Ukrainian teams, but you know their model now is to develop young Brazilians, and that means they lack of experience in a lot of places, and that showed at the back end of the Conference League. But you know, a first European semi-final since 2020, and winning the league with 3 games left is really impressive. And of course, they will be back in the Champions League as well, which is another great opportunity for them to represent and platform Ukraine.
That's it for Trans Europe Express. Coming up after us, it's how to win the world.
The performances that you've seen from Chelsea. I mean, the Brighton game.
You can't defend what Chelsea have done.
Why have they given
Caicedo
an extra year?
You cannot defend what Chelsea have done. There is nothing positive to say about the way the club has behaved and the club has been run, the club have played this season. There is nothing positive.
You can have 3 or 4 maybe that you see